Pirate God Level Cartoonist, Chapter 321 to 340. Chapter 321 Big Anchor, Eagle Eye. City of Seven Waters, on the roof of Dream Magazine. Luo lay lazily on the sun lounger, basking in the sun, while casually flipping through the information about animation in Skynet. In Skynet's forums, the animation clips used as promotional films were all praised. These people who regard comics as the holy product of entertainment, after seeing animation, it is like opening a new world, chatting non-stop in the forum. The words are full of expectations for animation, gorgeous special effects, three-dimensional character modeling, smooth fighting, every point is the object of readers' discussion. In this regard, Roha added another fire to it. Every day, a short clip of 2 to 5 minutes is posted on Skynet to tick off everyone's curiosity. Of course, these clips are not free, but paid for, 1 point per copy. In just a few days, Roha suppressed the inflation caused by the bonus points given before. But even if they know that the Dimensional Brigade is doing something, there are still readers from all over the world, just to enjoy the novel, animation, and offer points one after another. There is no way, with the soundtrack and dubbed animation and static comics, they are completely two concepts, coupled with the animation created by Roha, there is no such problem as funding at all, and the visual and auditory effects caused are even more. Far more than any previous comics. Even if it is dubbed the Human Bible, Violet Evergarden, the Universe God, the First Year of Jingxi, 88,000, the Century Hegemony, the Savior of the Industry, the Classic of Creation, and the Meaning of Existence, Violet Evergarden, is in animation production, and Roha's. Compared with the animation produced, it is also different from Cloud and Mud. And more importantly, as one of the core dubbing of comics, Roha has used all kinds of Android abilities and resources in Skynet to completely restore the original dubbing, and some will be modified to be more expressive. Under the blessing of various conditions, the success of the animation was completely expected by Roha. Next, just wait for them to agree. Raising his head and enjoying the mild sunlight, Roha's face was full of confident smiles. Skynet's plans to spread all over the world are unstoppable. Readers from all over the world only play the role of flames, and it is the boundless people who really push Skynet to spread all over the world. Just ask, who can resist the temptation of Skynet? Today Skynet's functions have evolved a lot, and its capabilities are rich enough to meet the needs of anyone. High-end secret books of countless occupations, tens of thousands of martial arts experience, all in Skynet. Every day, there are more top talents of various professions in Skynet, open paid videos, teach by words and deeds, and guide misunderstandings in knowledge, and even say that as long as you reward enough, the world's first shipbuilder, the world's top 3 architects, even a strong man who forms an army by one person will end up in person and teach you martial arts hand in hand. What? Is it not enough for you to become an army alone? Rest assured, there are more high-end talents in Skynet. Have you heard of Shichibukai? Have you heard of the greatest swordsman in the world? One of the 12 workers of the Supreme Sword, Black Sword Knight, have you heard of it? That's right, it's the famous Hawkeye Mahawk. He has been ranked number 1 on the paid video chart for consecutive years, and tops the sales chart. What? You said that he doesn't talk much every time he broadcasts, just practice swords there, and only starts the broadcast if he lacks points. Immortal, he can also let you defeat Janao. The following ordinary people. Ahem, 10 or 8 ordinary people are nothing to worry about. In addition to the most famous live broadcast section, the cartoon section has been upgraded from the comic section, the adventure section composed of explorers from all over the world, the knowledge section composed of various scientists, and various sections of various tricks are enough to make people in this world lack communication with the outside world. Ordinary people who lack entertainment, stay at home and indulge in Skynet every day. Moreover, in Skynet, there will be local tyrants scattered wealth from time to time, and there will be various income activities. As long as you catch up once, it is enough to be worth the income of ordinary people for a month. In this case, who would dare to stop Skynet's expansion? Unless he doesn't want to live anymore. However, under the mighty expansion plan of Skynet, there is still a group of people who are worried. Ellipsis 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 ellipsis. 9 flowers. World Government Headquarters, Holy Land Mary Joa, top. In the room where the 5 old stars routinely hold meetings, the 3 of them sat around the round table with sullen expressions, silent. The round table that originally had 5 luxurious seats was now empty. The 3 of them sat scattered around the round table, glanced at the empty seats from time to time, and secretly sighed. The 5 old stars, the 5 who rule the world government. What a lofty position. However, 2 are now dead. The strength of the general level, 2 people died. This blow is undoubtedly a heavy blow to the world government that is under increasing pressure from the outside world. So that the few people who were fighting secretly have completely lost that kind of mind at this time. It is very likely that the world government will not be able to keep it, so what are they fighting for? Are you looking for death? After an unknown amount of time, someone finally spoke. What do you think about the Skynet of the Dimension Brigade? Costello asked. What else can you think of, putting that kind of ghost with surveillance capabilities into the world? Even the righteous forces can't resist the temptation. Miyamoto Uenji answered with a gloomy face, holding the long sword in his arms. But, we can't organize them, can we? Zuobok said bitterly next to him. Now that Skynet is set up all over the world, it has become a settlement, and even if the world government wants to interfere, it cannot interfere. If they intervene, it means that they have touched the interests of more than 80% of ordinary people in the world. No matter how powerful the world government is, it is impossible to fight against so many people. Would you like to announce Skynet's surveillance capabilities? Miyamoto Uenji suddenly lit up and said. HMPH, do you think the powerhouses in the 7 waters can't feel it? Costello replied disdainfully, as long as the strength reaches the level of a major admiral of the Navy headquarters, or if he awakens his arrogance, he will be able to perceive that ghost. The existence of things, do you think those people in the 7 waters who are rushing to Skynet can't feel Skynet's surveillance? Chapter 322 Occupy the world, destroy its foundations. You mean, they know, but they don't say it. Even if they are monitored every day, are they willing to stay in the 7 waters? Zobok frowned, and he didn't understand. When the benefits far exceed the expectations in the heart, some things can be completely abandoned, and as far as I know, recently, Skynet's detection has become more and more hidden, and actively avoids those who can perceive it. People, this may also be the solution for the Dimensional Brigade. Quote. Hearing this, the other 2 were slightly startled, and then nodded solemnly. Indeed, the value of the things in Skynet is so high that even they are so moved that they even said that they had already sent people to the 7 Waters City in exchange for some things. Thinking of this, the 2 suddenly woke up, looked at each other immediately, shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Even they can't stand the temptation of Skynet, how can those ordinary people refuse? It seems that it is really impossible to stop Skynet, Zobok said in a low voice. The air gradually became heavier. After a while, Costello clapped his hands. Well, let's not talk about that, let's talk about making up for the missing power. Aokiji left, and 2 of the 5 old stars died. Although the news of Mido's death was temporarily blocked, it is an established fact that our strength has declined. At a time like this, if the 4 emperors have a change, we are likely to be passive. If the world government cannot solve it, it will easily shake the people. Moreover, the rebellion in the West Sea has not been resolved for a long time. The rebel army has now occupied several kingdoms, and its power is getting bigger and bigger. We can't wait any longer. It is necessary to discuss how to make up for the missing power and put the world back on track as soon as possible. Costello's issue, pointing directly to Miyamoto Uenji, immediately fell into contemplation. It was okay not to think about it before, but now that they think about it, they are horrified to discover that the dominance of the world government has reached such a dangerous level, and taking a step back is the end of the world. But, where to look for a new force? The room fell silent again, and after a while, Zobok thought about it before speaking. Otherwise, face the world and recruit troops in an all-round way, regardless of merit, only strength, directly promise positions, and give the position of general at the highest level. Full conscription. Hearing this, the other two suddenly looked up. This is indeed a good way. But if this is the case, will the Navy be shaken? After all, there are many people with sufficient strength, but they hesitate for many years without merit. If they dare to promote a large number of outsiders, it may cause mutiny. Miyamoto Uenji asked with a frown. This is a good solution, as long as it is implemented in the Navy, and by the way, some compensation is given to those who are strong enough and cannot be promoted because they have no merit. Costello said from the side, thinking about conscription in his mind. Hearing Costello's words, Miyamoto Uensai raised his eyebrows and looked like he was hesitating to speak, but in the end he didn't say anything. Don't look at Costello's simple words, but the consequences of such a large-scale extraordinary promotion cannot be solved so easily. But the world government is really... There is no way. Even if they knew that it was to drink poison to quench their thirst, they had to do it. The three discussed the issue of comprehensive military recruitment in detail again, and finally determined a plan and a series of promotion and compensation measures in order to minimize the impact. Okay, one last question. Closing the draft written in front of him, Costello looked at the two of them. Because there have been too many deaths of Tianlong people during this time, and there have been slaves murdering Tianlong people in recent days, the Tianlong People Council wants to temporarily remove all ordinary residents and slaves in Marijoa City and detain them. And what do you think of the field investigation and recalling the subordinates of the Tianlong people all over the world to temporarily take over the work of slaves? Clear it all out, except for the Tianlong people. Hearing this, Zuobok frowned. Although the Holy Land Marijoa is the base camp of the Tianlong people, the people who actually live here can be roughly divided into 4 parts. Dragon people, senior officials of the world government and their families, naval garrison, and slaves and servants who occupy 60% of the population. The rest are fine, but the families of those high-ranking officials. Of course they don't have to be imprisoned, but they still have to leave Marijoa for a while. Costello explained. Then I'm fine. Let them do it. Zobok and Miyamoto Tosai have seconded their opinions. In the current situation of crisis, the power in the hands of the Tianlong people is still very important, and there is no need for them to fight against the Tianlong people because of this trivial matter. It's just a brief ching-chung, and there won't be any big troubles. After the discussion, the three of them left the conference room one after another. At the same time, the order for comprehensive conscription was passed to the hands of the Warring States period. Has it reached this point? Warring States frowned and looked at the draft copy in his hand, stared at it for a long time, and did not move for a long time, but in the end, Warring States still put on the seal of approval. After doing all this, Sengoku seemed to have lost his strength, leaned on the chair tiredly, and sighed silently. Although he is called a wise general, how could the Warring States period not see the meaning behind it? It is even said that Sengoku saw far more things than Roha thought. The rebellion in the West Sea, the battle of the historical text of the road signs, and the major events that change the world again and again, the Warring States period can all find the shadow of the Dimensional Brigade behind it. And more. However, the Warring States discovered that it was too late, and there was no way to stop it. If the 5 old stars are all present and the green pheasant does not leave, maybe the Warring States will do everything in their power to kill them in the cradle. However, it is too late now. Powerless to recover. In the final analysis, there is still a problem with the governance of the world government. All kinds of wrong connivance have lost people's hearts, and they have handed over the great power to others, so that the current Warring States have nowhere to use them. Skynet covers the world and sees the whole world in its eyes. Weakening strength, forcing conscription, causing dissatisfaction among soldiers and destroying my foundation. Dimension Brigade, what are you doing? Warring States groaned and sighed, with a sad face, but in the heart of warring states, he recalled what Roja once said for no reason. The justice you insist is the justice of the world government or the justice of the people. Chapter 323 Fujitora, Aokiji. After the order for the conscription was issued, the entire navy, both inside and outside, immediately became busy. With such an important matter, no matter how efficient the navy is, it took a full week to prepare. A series of things such as recruit training grounds, recruit camps, recruitment policies, fund allocation, strength testing, etc. need to be well prepared. Therefore, it was not until 10 days later that the naval branches around the world issued a notice at the same time. Big conscription. As soon as the announcement came out, the world was boiling, whether it was pirates or the navy, whether it was ordinary people or hidden powerhouses, all of them were attracted by this announcement. New World, an unknown island. A middle-aged man wearing a lavender robe, clogs, and a wooden knife in his hand was sitting in the shade, listening to the young man beside him, reading the Navy's draft documents to him. Quote, "There is no upper limit on the number of recruits, and there is no deadline. Interested parties are invited to register at the nearby naval branch." After the young man finished reading, he stretched out his hand and shook it in front of the middle-aged man, and immediately opened his palm. "Oh, 8 give money." Hearing this sentence, the middle-aged man turned his head and looked at the child, groping with his hands in his arms. It turned out that the middle-aged man was blind. X-shaped scar on his forehead, spreading down and running through his eyes. If Roja is here, he must be able to recognize this person. It was Fujitora, smiling. In the original book, World Conscription, the powerhouse who was exceptionally promoted to a general is called a monster that is so powerful that it is terrifying. Although he was blind and could not see anything, Fujitora steadily placed a few coins in the young man's hand. Seeing that Fujitora took the pocket full of coins into his arms, the dark boy swallowed a few saliva, and finally looked at Fujitora's sturdy body, but gave up the idea in his heart and left in a hurry. It was not until the boy left that Fujitora shook his head helplessly. Although he is blind in both eyes and can't see anything, his perception is much stronger than that of people of the same level. Perception. It's just that Fujitora's character is too kind, and he didn't plan to care too much with that young man. Picking up the draft document beside him, a trace of sadness appeared on Fujitora's face. Has the world government reached this point? Fujitora sighed silently, stood up, and walked towards the distance. At the end of the street, there is a temporary naval recruitment point. On this day, the conscription pointed out that it was so powerful that dozens of ships of various sizes in the port flew 100 meters out of thin air and immediately fell into the sea. The blind middle-aged man shocked the world with one blow. 3 days later, the naval government announced that an exceptional general would be promoted to replace Aokiji. His name is Yishao, and his code name is Fujitora. In just a few days of conscription, a new general appeared. This news once again set off a storm in the world. Countless people who have confidence in their own strength have responded to the conscription, seeking wealth, and trying to soar into the sky. The strength of the Navy has skyrocketed again. West Sea, a certain sea area. Above the vast sea, it is very strange. The boundless solid ice froze the entire sea, the cold wind whistled, and the ice spread. A tall man in a blue and white suit walked slowly on top of the ice, towards the edge of the ice. Behind him is a huge iceberg. Among the icebergs, 3 or 4 pirate ships of different sizes could be vaguely seen, and the black and white skull and crossbones flags remained frozen. On the pirate ship, there are hundreds of human beings with different looks and actions. Without exception, everyone was frozen in ice. Some people are squatting beside the naval guns, loading the shells into the barrels. Some people are standing on the deck, with their left feet high on the platform and their right feet on the ground, maintaining the appearance of running. There are even people on their heads. Under his feet, he was frozen in the air next to the pirate ship, his expression horrified and unbelievable. With all kinds of gestures, it is not difficult to imagine what happened to these people. Maybe they found a man walking on the spreading ice above the sea. Surprised, the always ferocious pirates immediately launched an attack. However, before they could start their official attack, endless ice had spread to the ship. Wherever it goes, everything is frozen by it. Some people wanted to escape, but found that their feet had been frozen on the ground. Before they could react, the whole person was like a bug in amber, sealed in the ice. Some people try to attack the spreading ice and slow down the trend. However, no matter if it is a long knife or axe, when it is cut on the ice, it will be frozen by the ice immediately, and then spread along the blade of the weapon. People are frozen. Finally, the pirates discovered the huge gap between the two sides and the ground that day, and began to run, and even said they wanted to jump off the boat to escape. However, the speed of the ice spread is too fast, and often the pirates who jumped into the sea were frozen in the air before they fell into the sea. In just a few minutes, a huge iceberg has been formed, and the three extremely brutal pirate groups will be completely frozen in the ice. Until death. Leah, we should go. It didn't take long for Aokiji to come to the edge of the ice, where a boat the size of a small yacht was quietly floating on the sea. However, Aokiji's call was not answered. The body stagnates slightly, and there is no time to think about it. The green pheasant rises from the ground, and the next second has fallen on the deck, and the cold air all over the body is rolling down, and the momentum is amazing. However, when Aokiji saw the unexpected guests on the ship, his face sank. One tall, one short, one fat and one thin, two men were standing on the deck looking at him with different eyes. Behind the two of them were the two Lena sisters who had passed out. After looking at the two sisters for a while and confirming that there were no injuries, Chingzi breathed a sigh of relief and looked coldly at the two uninvited guests in front of him. Eustace, Bartholomew, what are you two going to do? Although they were asking questions, behind Aokiji, dozens of ice spears with killing intent gradually appeared out of thin air. Ready to burst out at any time, killing people. Don't rush to do it first, Big. The leader wants to see you. Kid said with an embarrassed expression, his body rattled with iron sand. Even if his current strength is progressing rapidly, it is still not enough for a general-level powerhouse. Just facing Chingzi's aura made his heart heavy, and before the fight, he had already lost 30% of his combat power. But at this moment, the Bartholomew bear beside him suddenly took a step in the direction of Kid. One step difference, the difference between heaven and earth, instantly isolates Aokiji's momentum, allowing Kid to breathe. The Bartholomew bear seemed to have done a trivial thing. He didn't even look at Kid, but looked directly at the green pheasant on the opposite side. Someone on our side wants to talk to you, she said. She will arrange the final battle for you, and then meet the new world. Chapter 324 Target, Ralph Drew. World conscription, of the world government. The whole world has been caught in a wave of darkness, surging in darkness, and countless spies have been slaughtering endlessly. And in this dark tide, three people who should have stood at the top of the tide gathered together. New World, Cake Island. Today's Cake Island, everyone on the island is shrouded in a cloud, and from time to time they look at the center of the island, full of fear. As early as yesterday at noon, after Bigmom received a phone call, he didn't know what to do, and suddenly he lost his temper and drove out all the servants who served her. Can't help it, Bigmom also ordered that everyone is prohibited from approaching her room, not even the cake that must be eaten every day, so she locked herself in the room. A member of the Big Mom Pirates, in addition to being afraid, can't help but worry, what is it that makes Bigmom so angry? But when Bigmom was angry, no one dared to approach him, let alone ask what was going on. But just when there was a sad look in the Cake Island, there was a different scene in Bigmom's room. Click, click. Bigmom sat cross-legged on the bed, eating the spare sweets in big mouthfuls. His face was dull. How could he look angry? However, Just when Bigmom picked up a large piece of beautifully shaped cream cake and was about to put it into his mouth, he suddenly stopped, suddenly turned his head and looked at the corner of the room. Oh, it was discovered. A brisk and magnetic voice came from the darkness of the room. A figure in a gray robe slowly walked out of the shadows. I didn't expect you to arrive first, redhead. Bigmom slowly put the cake into his mouth to chew, but his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Although she drove all the servants away, the defensive power of Cake Island did not weaken in the slightest. The red hair was able to sneak in here without disturbing anyone, which really made Bigmom a little upset. It seems that we need to rectify the defense force, Bigmom thought. At the same time, the person who came out also took off the hood on the robe, revealing a head of dark red hair. It was Shanks who came after Roha's notification. Shanks didn't answer, and sat in front of Bigmom unceremoniously. Regardless of Bigmom's face, he picked up a piece of pudding and ate it. Well, it's delicious, but it's just a little sweet. Shanks licked his lips with satisfaction, ignoring Bigmom's dark face, and smirked a few times in his heart. He and Bigmom don't have much hatred, but they have been fighting each other for many years, and they have long been unhappy with each other. To be so disgusting about Bigmom, the redhead is still very happy. Is Roha not here yet? Shanks looked around. It should be soon, the appointed time. Bigmom frowned and said, but just halfway through the words, there was a sudden change from his side, and Bigmom and Shanks looked at them together. A young man in black suddenly appeared beside them and greeted them with a smile. Looks like I'm late. It was Roha who arrived by teleportation. Seeing that after Shanks, another person appeared in his room without disturbing any guards, Bigmom's face was even more ugly. However, this expression only lasted for a short time. Bigmom's complexion changed from cloudy to clear, and he couldn't wait to ask Roha. You have deciphered the historical text of road signs. Well, it's cracked. Roha nodded, and when he mentioned the crack, he did glance at his mouth. Because the cracking time this time is really a bit long. Originally, Roha thought that each piece of the historical text of the road sign recorded a location, and as long as the 4 locations were crossed and connected, the location of Ralph Drew could be inferred. But Roha didn't expect that the text recorded on the historical text of the road sign was actually a code word, but a simple crack was simply a mess of garbled characters. In the end, there was no way. Roha mobilized a lot of Skynet's resources, and a whole batch of documents related to the code word, and only then cracked the 4 historical texts of the road signs and obtained the coordinates of Ralph Drew. Then let's go now, Shanks asked beside him. Let's go now. I'm in a hurry. I haven't decided who to take with me, Bigmom said from the side. You don't need to bring people. The fewer people who know about this, the better, just the 3 of us and the red-haired pirates. Roha suddenly remembered after noticing Bigmom's expression, and said with a smile. Don't worry, after you go, I will give you the 4 historical texts of the road signs and the road signs of Ralph Drew. If there is treasure, you can bring someone to fetch it later. This time, Bigmom's face was relieved, he nodded, and did not speak anymore. Then let's go, Roha said with a smile, extending his hand to Bigmom and Shanks. Yes, Shanks nodded indifferently. Let's go then. Bigmom nodded again and again. The next moment, Roha launched teleportation, and the 3 disappeared in place. A few minutes later, Roha and Shanks appeared on the bow of the Red Firth, heading towards Ralph Drew's coordinates. As for Bigmom, because of her size, it is easy to be exposed when she comes out. At this moment, she is hiding in the cabin and eating sweets. Chapter 325 Sea of Endless Abyss. This time, the voyage spanned more than half of the New World and lasted for a month. Until today, the Red Firth has just arrived at its destination. After Roha stopped the ship, everyone rushed out of the cabin, ran to the deck, and looked around. Where is Ralph Drew? I didn't see it. Isn't there a sea all around? Hey, I seem to have an impression of this place. Is it called Endless Abyss, the Sea of Endless Abyss? Shanks slowly walked to the deck, looking at the sea in front of him with a look of nostalgia. You know this place. Even Bigmom came out of the cabin. After hearing Shanks' words, he glanced at him in surprise, then nodded as if he had remembered something. That's right, after all, you and Roger used to been to love Drew. But where exactly is Ralph Drew? Bigmom asked again. Below this, under this sea area, there are countless unfathomable abysses. According to a scholar under Captain Rogers at the time, it seems to be the influence of something like the movement of Plate 893. Blue is in one of the abyss. Shanks explained. Then do you remember where the abyss where Ralph Drew was? Shanks scratched his head, a little embarrassed. When I first arrived in this sea area, I was ordered to stay on the boat, and later I went in Ralph Drew, so. I don't know. Shanks spread his hands. Hearing the conversation between the two of Shanks, the people around them suddenly widened their eyes, leaned on the fence curiously, and looked down. Wow, I saw it. There is really an abyss. It's so dark. You can see the abyss below from the sea, isn't it very big? That's right, even if I brought the bubbles from Fishman Island this time, it would take a long time to find just one of them, and the water pressure at this depth below, if the bubbles burst, it would kill people. Ha ha ha, Jesus Cloth, are you afraid? Fuck you, how can this uncle be afraid? I finally came here, I can't see what Ralph Drew looks like, and I can't brag with the children when I go back. There was laughter and laughter on the deck, and it could be seen that he was about to arrive at the place that the world longed for, Ralph Drew, which made everyone in the Red Hair Pirates very excited. In the eyes of this group of guys who are loyal to adventure, the bottomless abyss in front of them is just a difficulty in the adventure, and they cannot resist their enthusiasm for adventure. Bigmom on the side looked at the harmonious scene of everyone, his eyes fluctuated for a while, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Hey, Roja, did you come up with something? Shanks looked around for a while and shouted behind him. Come on, wait a moment. Roja took a map and kept comparing it with the deciphered location of Ralph Drew, trying to reduce the search range a little. Not to mention, the final search range was finally determined in an area of more than 10 square kilometers. In this area, there are 3 underwater abyss. Alright, everyone bring the bubbles, let's go find them. Shanks clapped his hands and shouted loudly. I know, boss. Finally going to meet Ralph Drew. Ha ha ha, I must be the first to find it. Bragging, my swimming speed is 3 blocks away from you. In the sound of frolic, the members of the red-haired pirates put on waterproof membranes and jumped into the sea. Thump, thump, thump. A series of water splashes splashed, and seeing Shanks jumping down, Roja turned his head and looked at Bigmom with a tangled face beside him. You stay here, and we'll call you back when we find it. Okay. Hearing this, Bigmom nodded heavily. As a devil fruit person, it is too dangerous to go into the sea, but Roja and Shanks both went to sea to find them personally. If she stayed on the boat, it would be unreasonable. Roja's opening like this undoubtedly gave Bigmom a step down. After finishing speaking, Roja and Shanks looked at each other and jumped down. Entering the bottom of the sea and going downstream, Roja saw the huge abyss all over Haiti at a glance. The cracks spread all over the sea area for thousands of miles, it was dark and terrifying, and it was extremely cold, like scars on the planet. Hundreds of cracks are about 100 kilometers long. Even if an island is thrown into it, I am afraid that there will be no waves. Even small cracks are more than 10 kilometers long. There is no difference between ants walking into the vast mountains, they are small and terrifying. Fortunately, the crack in the target area, the largest, is only more than 20 kilometers long, and there is still hope in the search. If it is the crack that is more than 100 kilometers long, I am afraid that Roja will turn around and leave, and directly mobilize the android army to search. The power of heaven and earth is indeed terrifying. Roja shuttled in the sea, looking at the seabed cracks that were getting closer and closer with admiration. Such a spectacular view cannot be seen on Earth. But just as Roja admired the mighty power of the world and was about to drill into the crack, suddenly a huge gray-white squid with tentacles up to 100 meters emerged from the sand on the seabed beside him, and swept towards Roja. Neptune class. Excessive. Roja's eyes turned cold, and the sharp blade came out of the sheath. Swish. In the bottom of the sea, a silver-white light like a bright moon rose and disappeared in a flash. The huge tentacles in front of Roja shrank into a ball in an instant, visible to the naked eye, centered on the tip of the tentacles, and after spreading to the squid's head, a tiny bloodstain appeared. The next moment, the waves in Haiti were choppy, the waves rolled, the bloodstains on the squid suddenly expanded, and countless blood spurted out. The giant sea king was cut in half by Roja's sword. It seems that because of the inaccessibility of people here, the sea kings breed very quickly. Rolling the sea water and pushing out the blood beside him, Roja frowned and launched a domineering look. In his perception, within a few kilometers, there are actually several huge life reactions, the strongest of which is even 3 times stronger than the giant squid just now. That's not good. Although the people of the red-haired pirates are very strong, they can't even use half of their strength under the sea. If ordinary members encounter these giant sea kings, it is estimated that they will be finished. Roja frowned and took out a phone bug in his arms. That was specially prepared by Roja as a phone bug for temporary communication, and all diving members had one share. Chapter 326 Roll. Everyone stop for a while, everyone don't go further. Ordinary members move closer to the surrounding cadres as soon as possible. If there are no cadres, stay together in a group, there is danger at the bottom of the sea. Roja ordered the phone bug. Because Roja is the fastest, the rest of the people who dived into the water have been dropped by him at least a few hundred meters away, only Shanks is not far behind him. Hearing Roja's order, the people who dived into the water suddenly stopped and moved closer to the surrounding companions. Roja, what's wrong? Shanks swam over and asked worriedly. There are giant sea kings here, and it is estimated that there are still a lot of them, and I feel that there will be a lot in the abyss. Giant sea kings. Shanks frowned, knowing the importance of the matter. The giant sea kings are often over a few hundred meters in size, and the largest overlord level can even reach thousands of meters, and they are the absolute overlords in the sea. Even Shanks would have to waste a lot of effort when encountering a giant sea king at the overlord level in the sea, not to mention the rest of the red-haired pirates. A sniper like Jesus BU, even in the sea, is not as good as some ordinary members. In that case, you search for one, I search for one, and the rest of the people jointly search for the last abyss. After the search is completed, how about going to the rest of the place to help? Shanks said with consideration. Compared with the rest of the ordinary crew, Roja and Shanks possessed a domineering look, a larger range, stronger precision, and a significantly faster search. Coupled with their strong physical fitness, they are almost as fast in the sea as swimming fish, and their search speed is amazing. Therefore, if one person searches, the speed will not be much slower than that of other ordinary members combined, but there are some places that need to be observed with the naked eye. It's a little more troublesome. Okay, so be it. Roja nodded and added at the end, let them wait for a while, let's clean up these sea kings on the bottom of the sea first, try not to make too much blood, so as not to attract the rest of the bloodthirsty fellows. This is simple. Shanks nodded with a smile, and swam to a hidden sea king in the distance. The next moment, an extremely domineering terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the bottom of the sea, sweeping in all directions, and its tyrannical place even affected the sea area around Shanks. Countless seas rolled, bringing bursts of white waves, surging in all directions. Go. It is Shanks domineering. Under the domineering arrogance of Shanks, these giant sea kings fainted one after another. Even if they didn't pass out, they were as if they had been hit by someone. Perceiving Shanks' momentum, Roja smiled faintly, his body blurred for a while, and the next second, he appeared at the junction of several giant Sea King chassis. A tyrannical arrogance that is not weaker than Shanks, and even slightly stronger than that of Shanks, also bloomed from Roja's body. Domineering and domineering. Long way. As soon as the momentum of the world's top predator appeared, all the creatures in the entire sea could not help but crawl to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Facing the slaughter at the top of the food chain, they could not raise any resistance at all. It is even said that the fish swimming around Roja were attacked by this momentum, and their brains were directly injured and their spirits lost. If they were replaced by humans, they would be vegetative. However, this is not over yet. As soon as the figure flashed, Roja had already appeared beside the nearest plesiosaur-like overlord-level Sea King. Before the Sea Kings could react, Roja's figure had turned into a phantom, split the sea, and rushed over. He raised his fist and slammed it down suddenly, and the powerful punch slammed into the neck of the giant Sea King. Bam! The sound like Hong Zhang Dalu made the people floating above cover their ears and looked horrified. You know, this is on the bottom of the sea. No matter what you do, the sound will be much smaller than on the ground, and to be able to make this level of noise on the bottom of the sea, you can imagine how violent the power of that punch is. Crack! The heart-pounding voice came from the neck of the plesiosaur Sea King. The next moment, the neck of the plesiosaur Sea King suddenly bent into a numb angle. The whole giant Sea King crawling on the ground, unexpectedly. After being punched by Roja, he moved sideways abruptly, rubbing the sediment on the bottom of the sea and pushing it for tens of meters before stopping. Ow! The powerful vitality of the giant Sea King made it not die immediately, and with an angry howl, it was about to find the enemy it beat. However, before it raised its head, Roja appeared beside it again and kicked it out. Bam! Bam! Boom! Under a series of heavy punches, the giant Sea King was pushed horizontally by Roja for hundreds of meters in the bottom of the sea, and a huge gap was abruptly plowed. Every punch will tremble the whole sea, and every kick will make the ground on the sea floor emit bursts of whining sounds, crack open ravines one after another, the sand floats, and the sea is polluted. 9 flowers. In the end, Roja kicked like an axe, and stepped the plesiosaur into the bottom of the sea. The shaking in the seabed finally stopped. Roja is really, more and more scary. The battle before and after, although the momentum was amazing, it only happened in 10 seconds. In a mere 10 seconds, the giant Sea King with a height of more than 500 meters and smashing the sea was caught like this. Abruptly died in the deep sea. Until death, it has no ability to issue any counterattack. Okay, solve one, let's see, there are 1, 2, 3, 6. Roja stood on the corpse of the giant Sea King, looking around, looking at one after another sweep the body of the Sea King. Many Sea Kings looked at this monster that was as small as an ant to them, but terrifying like a demon, and trembled all over. As the overlords of the Sea Kings already have the initial wisdom. Although they are not smart, they are almost equivalent to a young child of a few years old. Some of the most instinctive feelings are still possessed. And now, in the minds of the Sea Kings, the only emotion is fear. They wanted to run, but the domineering arrogance they suppressed made it difficult for them to move. But at this moment, a sudden feeling of relief came, and the Sea Kings were surprised to find that the strange aura that had been suppressed on their bodies was actually gone. The sudden response of the action made the brains of the few Neptunes fall into a state of confusion. They raised their heads and looked around in confusion, not knowing what was going on. Go away! Suddenly Roja shouted loudly, echoing in the sea, and blasting in the ears of the Sea Kings like thunder. Immediately, all the Sea Kings, like frightened birds, fled in all directions, swimming frantically toward the distance without looking back. Glancing at the fleeing Sea Kings lightly, Roja chuckled and looked at the surrounding abyss. What? You still want to die? Although Roja did not shout this time, the voice spread strangely into the surrounding abyss. Suddenly there were more than a dozen huge Sea Kings, rushing out of the abyss and fleeing. Until no more sea kings came out, Roja shook his head helplessly and picked up the phone bug. Okay, the sea kings around here are probably gone, but I don't know if there are any fish that have slipped through the net, so be careful when searching. Chapter 327 Disappeared Person. After Roja's expulsion, the search operation went much smoother. Although there were still some sea kings who were not intelligent enough or who lived under the abyss of the sea to attack, it was still a lot less and no casualties were caused. But even so, the progress of the search is still very slow. These undersea abyss are really too big and too deep. When Roja was searching for the abyss under the sea, because of curiosity, he went downstream for tens of thousands of meters in one breath, but he still didn't see the real bottom. As far as he could see, there was only boundless darkness. I really don't know, how did Roger and the others find it in the first place? The scope above the historical text of the road sign is still a bit vague. Roja shook his head helplessly, but he didn't plan to give up. Because according to Shanks, when the Roger pirates searched, they only found Ralph after 2 days. Judging from this inference, Roger and others have not gone too deep, and there is still hope. But Roja never imagined that this search would be 5 days. In the first 2 days, the red-haired pirates were basically dispatched in full, and they spent more than 12 hours a day looking for them. Later, Roja saw that everyone was really tired, so he discussed with Shanks and divided the personnel into 3 batches. Rotate to find. During this period, Roja transferred nearly 100 android warriors from the capital of the Seven Waters and brought all kinds of equipment, but even so, in 5 days, he still found nothing. Ralph Drew, where is he? It's not a mistake, right? Roja sat on the deck, casually eating the barbecued meat in his hand, his face a little tired. Unlike those ordinary members who rotate in 3 shifts, Roja and Shanks have the strongest strength and the best physical strength. Such high-intensity work, even Roja felt the slightest tiredness. As for Shanks, he started adjusting his rest time as early as yesterday, and his body couldn't take it anymore. And Bigmom, seeing this situation, was really embarrassed. On the 3rd day, he had put on an extra-large waterproof diaphragm and went into the water to find it. Even if the fruit ability is not used, in terms of Bigmom's power and defensibility, in the sea, it is completely not afraid of any sea kings. Hey, keep looking. He clapped his hands, took out a tissue to wipe off the greasy hands, and Roja stood up and was about to continue into the water. But at this moment, the android warrior who had been serving him behind him suddenly pressed his helmet, as if he was answering something. When Roja was about to go into the water, he stopped Roja. What's wrong? Roja turned his head and asked %Kai. I. Sir, there is a companion. During the battle with the Sea Kings, the signal disappeared. The android replied respectfully. Disappeared in the battle? Are you sure you didn't fall into the deep sea? Roja asked with a frown. Roja was inevitably surprised when he saw the android warrior nodding without hesitation. Even if the humanoids were completely destroyed, it would be impossible for him to be so surprised. Because a large number of signal devices and special materials are used on the armor of the androids, even if they are swallowed by the Sea Kings or torn by sharp teeth, the signal on the armor will not disappear. There are only 2 ways to make the signal disappear. First, take the armor to a place that is 5 kilometers away from any android warrior, which is also the maximum distance between the android warriors to obtain a signal. Second, destroy all 21 signal sources on the armor. If you want to do anything, it is difficult for people who don't understand the armor of android warriors. After pondering for a moment, Roja raised his brows, as if remembering something, frowning and raising his head. Take me to where he last appeared before the signal died. Yes. 10 minutes later, Roja came to a bottomless abyss under the leadership of the android warrior. This abyss was jointly searched by ordinary members of the red-haired pirates and android warriors, and a depth of 12,000 kilometers has been searched so far. At this depth, the bottom of the sea is no longer bright, it is pitch black, and the search is completely dependent on the searchlights sent by Roja in the later period. Under such difficult circumstances, every encounter with the Sea Kings is a challenge for those members who are not familiar with domineering. If it wasn't for Roja's delivery of androids with detection capabilities, I am afraid that the people of the red-haired pirates should have been reduced. With the illumination of high-power searchlights, Roja also saw the surrounding situation clearly. In the cold and dead deep sea, there are still bloodstains left from the battle. The people who were injured in the battle just now are swimming upwards under the lead of the android warriors. On the surrounding cliffs, there are huge potholes caused by the impact of the Sea Kings, and some boulders are still falling off and falling into the seabed abyss below. It's near here, isn't there a more detailed location? Roja asked the android next to him. Because the Overlord-level Sea Kings appeared before, the battle was too fierce, and the companions in charge of the inspection were also involved in the battle, so it was impossible to record the detailed scope. The final inference is that it is in a spherical space with a radius of 3 kilometers around it. A radius of 3 kilometers. Roja touched his chin and pondered for a moment, and his eyes couldn't help but glanced at Jesus Cloth, who was looking to the side. Aware of Roja's gaze, Jesus Bu shook his head. No abnormalities were found. This time, Roja couldn't help frowning. Among all the people present, in terms of the range of arrogance and domineering, it was definitely headed by the sniper Jesus Cloth. Even Roja and Shank 4.1s were inferior to arrogance and domineering. A bit. However, even Jesus Cloth was not found. Is it really outside? He was directly knocked out by the Sea King class and floated out of the sensing range. Roja pouted, feeling a bit absurd. While thinking about it, Roja turned on the system to see if there was any solution. After a while, Roja's gaze stayed on the skill bar. If this is the case, it may be useful. The place where the line of sight falls is a skill that Roja likes very much. Open black lens bracket foresight. Close black lens bracket. If there is really a problem here, and if you can't perceive it with a sense of domineering, it is likely that Ralph Drew was hidden in a special way. If it is an intuitive ability, maybe you can give it a try. Chapter 328 Who is Waiting Ahead? As soon as he said it, Roja no longer hesitated, and immediately selected a fragment from the storage space and chose to use it. Consuming skill fragments. Intuition A. Intuition A, that is the intuition that has entered the level of predicting the future. With the intuition of A level, Arturia had escaped the noble phantasm of the law of karma, which Siyu Chilane claimed to be mortal, and pierced the spear of death thorns, which shows how powerful it is. Powerful. Just after using the fragments of intuition, Roja felt that there was something around him that was attracting him, maybe because he was eager to find Ralph Drew, which inspired the powerful intuition brought by intuition. But this alone is not enough. See the color domineering. Foresight. Invisible ripples emanated from Roja's body, and all the things in the vicinity of nearly 1,000 meters appeared in his perception. Subconsciously, Roja looked at the cliff on his right. There, something attracted him. It seems that it should be here. Roja raised his brows and ordered all the people in front of the cliff to disperse. When the crowd dispersed, Roja was full of energy, and his hands danced. The dozens of tons of seawater around him suddenly began to fluctuate with Roja's movements, and a submarine vortex gradually formed in the darkened Dead Sea. When the stirring seawater became more and more, until it reached the limit of Roja, Roja pushed forward with both hands, with a solemn face. The waves of white waves, like thousands of troops galloping, carry infinite power. He swept away towards the cliff in front of him. Boom! The tide was surging, the undercurrent was rolling, and the layers of water waves slapped on the cliffs, making bursts of roaring sounds. At this time, Roja had already closed his eyes, scrolling the waves while concentrating on perception. The roar of the waves hitting the cliff, the sound of sandstone falling off and rolling, the sound of turbulent water waves, the swaying sound of seaweed. Various sounds echoed in the water, and turned into countless messages that flowed into Roja's ears. For a while, everyone in the sea held their breath, for fear of disturbing Roja. After more than 10 minutes passed, Roja slowly opened his eyes, and a faint joy appeared between his eyebrows. "It's so well hidden, but I still found you." Ralph drew. Hearing Roja's words, the surrounding people suddenly showed joy, and Shanks and Bigmom, who came to hear the news, even swam to Roja's side. Found it? Shanks asked in surprise, and Big next to him also looked at Roja with anticipation. Yin. 9 times out of 10, it shouldn't be wrong. Roja nodded with a smile, and called a team of android warriors. Yin. Take out the memory chip, and then go there and have a look. It should be able to pass through. If you find anything, leave one person to come back to notify, and the rest will continue to explore. Roja pointed to a depression on the cliff in front of him, and ordered lightly rowed. The black-armored warrior nodded silently, and immediately took out a memory chip from the back of his helmet and handed it to his companion. Through this memory chip, even if they died during exploration, they can be resurrected in the laboratory. Without any extra words, a team of android warriors set up a battle formation and slowly swam in the direction Roja pointed. When he reached the target location, the leading android with the ability to regenerate his body took a deep breath and immediately reached out his hand to touch the cliff. Arm goes through. Seeing this scene, there were sudden exclamations from the surrounding area. They could never imagine that such a magical thing could appear here, except for Ralph Drew. Sure enough, it's there. Roja's face showed joy and nodded towards the black-armored warrior. Without hesitation, the leading black-armored warrior slammed into the cliff in front of him, and immediately disappeared into the cliff. Behind him, several android warriors from the same team followed one after another and entered the cliff. The people outside, unknowingly, gathered over, without blinking their eyes, looking straight at the cliff with a look of anticipation on their faces. As long as the android warriors come out successfully, this Ralph Drew trip will really usher in the last light. They will become the second group of people to enter Ralph Drew after One Piece Roger. Time passed little by little. Although the android warriors passed through the cliff and disappeared, it was only a minute, but to the highly nervous crowd, it seemed that several hours had passed. Finally, 3 minutes after the android warrior disappeared, an arm covered with pitch-black armor suddenly protruded from the cliff. The next moment, the android warrior in black armor appeared in the eyes of everyone. Success. What's in it? Is it Ralph Drew? Bigmom couldn't help the excitement in his heart, swam over in a hurry, grabbed the shoulders of the android warrior and shook it desperately. Warrior did not answer, but turned to look at Roja not far away, without looking at Bigmom. Sensing the state of the android warrior, Bigmom's expression froze, and he withdrew his hand in embarrassment. Speak, Roja said lightly. I found the disappearing companion at the entrance. It was fine, but I just passed out. There is a natural karst cave inside, connected by a tunnel. The other companions are exploring. Before I came out, I had already traveled about 800 meters. The android warrior replied respectfully, and immediately told Roja the detailed situation in detail. The cliff wall that used to be the entrance is completely a film camouflaged by projection. After passing through the film, it is a lake in a cave composed of a large amount of seawater. 210 floats up from the lake and will appear in a karst cave. In the northeast corner of the cave, there is an artificially excavated tunnel connecting unknown places. Hearing this, everyone could no longer hold back the excitement in their hearts and gathered around Roja one after another. Roja, let's go. Go in and see. Boss Roja, since we've found it, let's go and have a look. I'll be the vanguard. Finally found Ralph Drew. Ha ha ha, it's been like Lao Tzu these days. The long search really made everyone physically and mentally exhausted, and they suddenly found their target. Everyone couldn't help but get excited. Even Bigmom, who had been staying in the red-haired pirates and felt uncomfortable, was smiling at this moment. Got it, got it. Roja stretched out his hand with a smile, and pressed it twice in the air. After everyone was quiet, he spoke. Me, Shanks, and Bigmom take the lead. Are you alright? No. Boss, is it too dangerous for you to take the lead? Let's come. Fuck you, just like you. You must be the first to die when you encounter any danger. Shanks scolded with a smile and kicked aside the subordinate who proposed the substitution, preventing Roja from walking towards the cliff. Go away, what are you waiting for here? Today is the day we enter Ralph Drew. Banquet tonight. Oh. Chapter 329 finally arrived. Wow tilde. For thousands of years, the rare human cave has finally welcomed its third group of visitors since its birth. In the central lake of the huge cave, silhouettes emerged from the water and climbed ashore one after another. Wow, it's so big. Is this Ralph Drew? Nothing. Idiot, this is the entrance, what do you think? Such a big cave. Is it true? Why do I feel like it was artificially excavated here? It was artificially excavated. Hearing everyone's comments, Shanks looked around with confusion on his face. Roja also observed the surroundings, thoughtfully. Indeed, no matter the cave here, the passage from the entrance, or the tunnel on the other side of the cave, the size is not only the size of ordinary boats, even 3 or 4 boats can drive over. Probably the only small one is that entrance. Thinking of this, Roja called an android. Go back, use the projection phone bug, and take pictures of the entrance and exit carefully. A few minutes later, Roja looked at the photo taken by the android and narrowed his eyes slightly. Sure enough, there are traces of acquired repairs at the entrance, that is to say, the person who created this passage transported something huge here. Interesting. Roja couldn't help but smiled lightly, and asked the android next to him, where is the team exploring ahead? It's about 2 kilometers ahead. 2 kilometers. Roja frowned, and immediately ordered, let them stop and wait for the large army to advance together. Although the android can be resurrected at will without the memory chip being destroyed, under normal circumstances, Roja does not want them to suffer too much loss. After all, in Roja's purpose, the android will never be used as a tool in the end. Existence, but human beings. After simply counting the number of people, the crowd began to move forward. The long tunnel is dim and yellow, and the original appearance can be seen under the lights in the hands of everyone. The artificially excavated tunnel, although after a long time, can still see the grandeur of the past. On the wall, every tens of meters, there is a huge luminous pearl, which is responsible for lighting. Although the luminous pearl has long lost the soft light of the past, if it is taken outside, it is still enough to make women crazy. Although the pavement made of huge stone slabs has cracks and tenacious grasses drilled out of it, its scale still shocked everyone. Although such a project is nothing in today's pirate world, don't forget where it is and when it was built. Before I don't know how many years ago, it was possible to create such a grand siege at a place of 20,000 meters under the sea. It is a miracle comparable to the Great Wall and the pyramids of the previous life. Along the way, the surprise in the eyes of everyone became stronger and stronger, and the deliberately suppressed exclamations never stopped. Wow, this night pearl is so big, take it down and take it down for my child to play with. Don't move, what if something triggers? It's okay, Boss Shanks picked one up from the ground just now, should be okay. By the way, do you think it's strange that this place is clearly deep under the sea? Why is it not filled with water? I don't know, maybe it's a bubble similar to Fishman Island. Isn't there a layer of phantoms outside? It should be about the same. Although the walking people did not dare to speak loudly, their low-pitched discussions never stopped. Only Roja, whose face has been flat, walked indifferently in front. Bigmom looked at Roja in doubt, and then looked at Shanks who was playing with a night pearl, and couldn't help but ask. Roja, you already knew this was the case here. Hearing this, everyone turned their heads in unison and looked at Roja. Hey, don't say it, just now I found that Boss Roja didn't mean to be surprised at all, it looked like he was walking in his own home. It's true, I also found it, just like we pick up the night pearl on the ground like a bun, and the boss Roja doesn't even look at it. You're such a bum, Royana doesn't care about the money, and I don't care either. Don't I want to take it back and play with the children? Roja, tell me, do you know something? Shanks hooked Roja's shoulders and laughed out loud. Well, there were some guesses before, but now it's just to confirm the guesses. Roja smiled lightly. Let's look forward, I'm not sure now. Before they knew it, everyone had advanced 3 kilometers in the tunnel, and the android team, which was the vanguard, had also converged. The reassuring thing is that along the way, there are no traps or other things, and everyone gradually relaxes their vigilance. When the distance had been extended to 5 kilometers, Roja, who was walking at the forefront, suddenly waved his hand and stopped. Shanks also stopped the people behind him, held his breath, looked around, and looked at Roja. Roja closed his eyes slightly, and when he opened it again, a faint smile appeared on his face. It's windy, we'll be there soon. After finishing speaking, Roja suddenly accelerated his pace and rushed forward, and the people behind him also showed joy and followed. In such a dark tunnel, traveling 5 kilometers is really depressing. This is the people of the red-haired pirates. The overall quality is far superior to ordinary people. Otherwise, if it is someone else, I am afraid that the overall morale has dropped a bit. But even so, when they heard that they were about to walk out of the tunnel, everyone couldn't help but feel a little excited. After a short distance of a few hundred meters, light finally appeared at the corner ahead. Roja slowed down slightly, raised his vigilance, and walked around the corner. The soft light suddenly shone on Roja's body, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes. Ral was that he had already guessed about Ralph Drew in his heart, but when he saw the scene in front of him, he was still stunned. This is Ralph Drew. Chapter 330 Land of Miracles. QX protruding from the cliff. Standing on the edge of the platform, as far as you can see, it is full of emerald green and blue. In the sky, a milky white light ball floats on it, emitting a soft light, bringing infinite vitality. Closing his eyes and feeling, Roja was surprised to find that the light emitted by this ball of light actually gave him a sunlight-like feeling. It turned out to be an existence similar to an artificial sun. Under the sphere of light, there is a vast and fertile green space with an area of tens of square kilometers. There are plains, forests, hills, lakes, and even a trickling stream that traverses the entire land. The flowing water is blue and clear, full of vitality, and even a little black spot can be seen, wandering beside the stream. There are even animals. Roja couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. In such a place, it was an eye-opener that an ecosystem of this size could appear. 633. If it weren't for the huge rock wall above the ball of light, and the green space was also surrounded by rock walls, Roja would even think that he had come to the ground. Glancing at the green ground, Roja's eyes finally stayed in the center of the jungle, even if the trees in the jungle were already more than 10 meters high, but he still saw the steel monster with most of his body exposed. A spaceship. My God, come and see, what is this? Really or not, there is such a place under the sea. This is Ralph Drew, isn't it? It's the place where Roger used to be. It's spectacular. Where's the treasure? Where's Roger's treasure? What do you see in the forest over there? Suddenly, a series of exclamations came from behind. It turned out to be the people who fell behind Roja. They followed, and everyone rushed out of the tunnel. When they saw the magnificent scene in front of them, everyone couldn't help but let out an uncontrollable surprise. Voice. This scene in front of me is simply a miracle. After a full half, the exclamations of everyone subsided a little, but the shock in everyone's eyes could not be dissipated for a long time. Your goal is that thing? Shanks pointed to the steel ship in the distance and asked Roja. Yes, it's him. Roja nodded with a smile. Let's go down. Tilda. At this time, the platform occupied by everyone was 300 or 400 meters high from the ground. Although it was a trivial matter for Roja, Shanks, Big Mom and the other cadres, for ordinary members, it was impossible to get down. Fortunately, in the armor of the android warriors, there are hook locks for climbing, suction cups and the like, which solves the embarrassment of everyone. After half an hour, all the talents came to the ground. As soon as he landed, there was an exclamation beside him. Before Roha could react, he saw a black shadow rushing out, squatting under a tree in front of him, his eyes bright, staring at a strange-shaped plant under the tree. Rozak, what's the matter? Roha knew this person. He was the ship doctor on Shank's ship. He had superb medical skills. In an ordinary country, it was not an exaggeration to be called the Holy Hand of Medicine. Mother Prune. Boss Roha, this is Mother Prune. Rozak pointed to the strange-shaped plant under the tree, and shouted in surprise, this herb is the main medicine of many formulas. It has been extinct for a long time. As long as it is dug back, it can be cultivated again. Yeah, got it, you dig it out and take it away, we'll wait for you. Shanks on the side picked his nose and waved his hand. After finally waiting for Rozak and digging up the herbs, everyone finally moved on. But before he could take a few steps, Rozak, who was behind him, rushed out again and threw himself at the feet of Bigmom. Don't move, this is the elephant trunk flower. An extinct herb again, Big Mom asked with a frown. That's right. Rozak nodded, his hands and feet kept on, he immediately took out his tools and started digging. Seeing the scene of Rozak digging herbs on the ground, Roha raised his eyebrows and had a hunch in his heart. Sure enough, in the next journey, Rozak stopped every 10 steps and rushed at 100 steps. In just 10 minutes, he actually dug up more than a dozen kinds of herbal medicines that were extinct from the outside world, and there were more than one of each kind. Not only that, someone also picked up a piece of ore that fell out of nowhere on the ground, and showed it to the swordsman in the team that it was one of the ore that must be used to cast the supreme sword. This time, the entire team was boiling. They don't know anything about herbs, and they can't use them, but the ore that can cast the supreme knife. That's a rare material. And depending on the situation, there are at least more nearby. Their weapons can be updated. The crowd was excited for a while. Seeing this scene, Roha shook his head helplessly, and he almost understood the situation here. It is very likely that people have made it into a paradise-like place, storing many rare ores, herbs and other things. In this situation, it is impossible to restrain everyone. After releasing the domineering information, Roha simply asked Shanks to talk to Shanks, and then let everyone scattered with signal bombs and began to search. Watching everyone go away, Roha looked at Shanks and a few red-haired pirates who remained, and smiled faintly. Come on, our target is that ship. Chapter 331 Dorag was caught. The spaceship, located in the southeastern forest of Ralph Drew, is more than 40 meters high and about 600 meters long. It is streamlined as a whole. From a distance, it looks like a flat black drop of water. What the hell is this thing? Do you know, Roha? Shanks stroked the surface of the spaceship, in shock, with a trace of daze. Even though Shanks has become one of the few people standing at the top of the world, he doesn't know what a spaceship is at all. This thing should be something similar to the Ptolemy in Gundam. Roha kept walking around the spacecraft to observe. If unsurprisingly, this ship should be what Ralph Drew was meant to be, and where Roger wanted the pirates to reach. Although it is unknown how long the spacecraft has been here, judging from the moss and heavy stains covering its surface, it is estimated that it has been here for at least a few hundred years. What made Roha concerned was that he could feel that the ship had been exuding some kind of energy fluctuations, but Roha could not perceive the specific whereabouts of the energy fluctuations. This is it. Suddenly Roha had some kind of mark on the side armor of the spaceship. Reaching out and gently supporting it, the sand and moss on the surface of the spaceship suddenly fell down as if pushed by an invisible wall. And the hidden mark finally appeared in front of Roha. Isn't this Captain Rogers' D? Shanks came over. It should be. Roha nodded slightly, but he recalled what Whitebeard said after Ace died. Even if the bloodline is cut off, their flames will not go out. This is how it has been passed down from a long time ago and has been passed down to the present. And one day in the future, there will be people who carry the entire history of hundreds of years and want to challenge this world. Close black lens bracket. Warring States. Your world government has been afraid that one day will come, a huge battle that will involve the entire world. I'm not interested, but when that treasure is discovered one day, the world will be turned upside down. Close black lens bracket. Vaguely, Roja knew that Whitebeard must know something, and the spaceship in front of him was probably the source of what Whitebeard said, subverting the world. As long as you open it, everything will be understood. Roja stroked the steel armor in front of him and whispered softly. Look for it and see if you can find the entrance to this spaceship. This is very important to me. Roja said solemnly. Yeah, Shanks nodded heavily. Behind him, Beckman, Jesus BU and others immediately set off to search. However, several people surrounded the spaceship and groped for several hours, and even wiped off all the moss and sand on the surface of the spaceship, but did not find anything resembling a doorway. Boom. Shanks kicked the spaceship, with a speechless expression on his face. This ghost. Isn't it a solid iron ball? After searching for a long time, there is not even a crack in the door. Roja didn't answer. At this time, his eyes had already become blue, and there was a thin blue on out of his eyes, scanning the entire spaceship. However, knowing that the time for the ability fragment was running out, Roja did not find anything that would allow him to enter the spaceship. It shouldn't be, how can I not get in? Roja touched his chin with a thoughtful look on his face. I see, if this thing is not a solid iron ball, or there is no door at all, are you looking for the wrong one? Impossible, it must be this thing. Then let's split it up and see. It won't let us in, can't we go in by ourselves? Shanks pressed the handle of the knife, eager to try. Cut apart. Roja knocked on the spaceship, a little moved. For him and Shanks, it was not difficult to cut off the steel. No matter how thick the armor was, it was just a matter of cutting for a while. It's just that Roja didn't want to make a move rashly. The spaceship looked like it was still running. If he made a move rashly and was mistaken for an enemy trying to invade, it would be troublesome if there was any counterattack ability. How the hell do I get in? Roja was a little distressed, but at this moment, the corner of his eyes suddenly saw the D mark on the surface of the spacecraft. D. Wait. Roja suddenly smacked his palm and muttered to himself. Ellipsis ellipsis. 9 flowers. The world government fears the D family because they have a certain will and the power to subvert the entire world. But to turn the world upside down and start a huge battle involving the whole world, they have to know a treasure. Ralph Drew's treasure, that's it. Speaking of the end, Roja excitedly hammered the spaceship beside him. Wait for me here, I'll be back when I go. Before Shanks and the others asked Roja what he wanted to understand, Roja left a sentence, and immediately disappeared in place. Shanks, with a confused face, looked straight at the place where Roja disappeared, and after a while, he scratched his head in distress. Boy Roja, what did you think of, so excited? Shanks looked at the few people beside him suspiciously. I don't know. I don't understand either. I don't understand. Chishushu's reply made Shanks sigh helplessly. Roja gave too little information, and even Beckman couldn't guess what it was, making Roja so excited. After discussing for a while, the discussion didn't make it clear. Shanks could only helplessly spread his hands. Okay, we're gone too. Finally come to Ralph Drew. Look everywhere, bring some souvenirs or something. Boom. Suddenly, there was a loud sound of heavy objects falling to the ground behind him. The sudden voice suddenly startled Shanks. With a finger, the sword fell into his hand, only then did Shanks turn his head. When he saw Roja reappearing and the person Roja was carrying, the corners of his eyes twitched. Luo, Roja, don't tell me you're carrying that rigid guy. Unfortunately, it's me. The man in the dark green cloak gently lifted his hood, revealing a rebellious face. On the left cheek, the scarlet tattoos interlaced with each other added a bit of embarrassment to him. Monkey D. Drago. Shanks read out the name of the world's most vicious criminal, with a frown. Long time no see, redhead. Drago sneered, full of suffocation. Chapter 332 Kronos. In the open space next to the spaceship, the atmosphere was slightly dignified for a while. Duloge and Red Hair stared at each other, their auras were staggered, the smell of gunpowder was strong, and they had a posture that they would fight each other if they disagreed. Okay, you two stop for a while, no matter what grievances you have, we'll settle it later. Roja walked between the two of them and spoke to dissuade them. HMPH, rigid guy, I can't be happy every time I see you. Shanks snorted coldly, put his knife into the sheath, and stopped looking at Drago. Drago raised his brows, but after seeing Roja, he didn't speak. Unlike Shanks, his relationship with Roja is more like a strategic partner, and even said that the status is lower, he can't help showing Roja face. What's the urgency for you to bring me here in such a hurry? No, what's behind you is my emergency. Roja nodded slightly, motioning Drago to look back. Huh. Drago looked back, the armor of the spaceship filled his field of vision, and he knew that Drago took a few steps back before he could see the entire spaceship. What is it? Rao is Dorag, and his expression changed in the face of such a huge steel spaceship. Spaceships, of course, are also Lovedrew's real secrets. Roja's indifferent words caused Drago's complexion to change dramatically. He turned around suddenly, looked up and down, left and right, and then Drago stared at Roja, his face full of disbelief. You mean, this is Ralph Drew? Yes. Roja nodded with a smile. Ralph Drew. You actually found Ralph Drew. This is actually Ralph Drew. Hearing Roja's words, Drago couldn't control his emotions for a while, walked back and forth a few steps, and immediately suddenly, a whirlwind rose under his feet and flew into the sky. In the sky of Ralph Drew, it flew everywhere. It was not until 10 minutes later that Drago returned to Roja. After taking a few quick breaths and calming the excitement in his heart, Drago grabbed Roja's shoulder and asked eagerly, since this is Ralph Drew, is there really a treasure that can subvert the world? That's why I came to you. Roja pointed to the spaceship in front of him. Try it and see if D's bloodline can open it up and turn the world upside down. Subvert the world. Drago walked towards the huge spaceship step by step, his eyes full of hope. Years of running around, fighting, and a lifetime of dreams, maybe, will come true. As Dorag approached the spacecraft, Roja clearly felt that the energy that had been lingering on the surface of the spacecraft began to fluctuate. Until Drago walked to the spaceship, reached out and pressed the D mark. Mutation finally appeared. The dazzling blue light appeared on the surface of the spaceship, slowly converging, and finally formed a dark blue light beam, illuminating Dorag's eyebrows. Along with Drago's low humming, a mechanically cold voice sounded in everyone's ears. Identity confirmed, Kronos was successfully unlocked. Close black lens bracket. Welcome, descendant of the master. Close black lens bracket. When the icy sound ended, a rectangular crack suddenly appeared on the side of the spacecraft. The next second, the crack bulged and opened, and a gangway appeared in front of everyone. Kronos, ending the rule of Uranus, ending the second-generation king of the gods in the Golden Age. Roja's mind turned like electricity, slightly hooked the corner of his mouth, and walked towards the gangway. Behind him, Shanks was stunned for a moment, and immediately followed, but the cadres of the red-haired pirates were stopped by Beckman when they were about to follow. Walking into the interior of the spaceship, the place where the three of Roja appeared as a spacious corridor. The corridor is completely white, and soft white light shoots out from the gaps in the walls, illuminating everything around it. Here, it's very similar to the place Mido-Senemon took me to. Roja looked around, making comparisons in his heart. At this moment, the wall next to Roja suddenly cracked a small opening, and then a metal ball swayed and floated out, floating in front of Drago. A small screen appeared on the surface of the metal ball. Inside the screen was a small arrow. "Is this what it means to let me go with you?" Drago asked. The metal ball flew up and down, and the symbol on the screen briefly turned into a smiling face, and then changed back. Roja hooked the corner of his mouth, nodded at Drago, and then the three followed the metal ball in front of him and walked towards the depths of the spaceship. Along the way, Roja silently calculated the distance in his heart, and when he reached a room on the bow of the spaceship, the metal ball closed the screen and swayed forward. "This is the bridge." Roja looked left and right, staying for a while on the seats on both sides and the high chair in the center. At this time, the metal ball finally flew to the console at the front of the bridge and landed firmly in the center of a groove. Om. Om. A faint humming sound sounded, and the falling of the metal ball seemed to trigger something, and a dreamy and bright blue light continued to appear around the bridge, flying around like fireflies. Gradually, when the humming sound became smaller and smaller, the blue light flying in the air began to gather in front of the three Rojas. In the end, all the blue rays came together. A man with a resolute face dressed in a navy costume appeared in front of several people. "My juniors, you are finally here. Since you can come here, it means that I am dead. And, you are ready to subvert the world." Chapter 333 People of the Moon. What subverts the world? What subverts it? Drago asked. However, the man who suddenly appeared, like a video projection, did not have the ability to reply. He didn't even look at Drago, but shook his head at the void and sighed silently. "I don't know how long it has been since I died, but with the characters of those traitors, I'm afraid you have already forgotten your own history, the D family who created the world, the history you should have." Hearing this, knowing that the man in front of him would not answer, the three of Roja did not ask, but thought in their hearts. Traitor. D family who created the world. The information revealed in this passage is really shocking. The D family, in the propaganda of the world government, has always been the enemy of God, the devil that subverts the world. Why, in the mouth of this man, became the race that created the world? Could it be that the traitor refers to the world government? Thinking of this, Drago's eyes lit up and looked up at the mysterious man in front of him. As if giving a few people time to think, the mysterious man didn't continue to speak until Dorag raised his head for dozens of seconds. "I hope you will listen carefully to the history of your ancestors before handing over the burden to you. A long time ago, we once lived on a beautiful planet, where there was a unified country called D, and our race was naturally called the D race. But later, because the population on the planet is increasing, the only resources can no longer afford the increasing population. So, the colonization began, and the colony ship I was on was named Oranos." Having said that, the mysterious man's expression suddenly turned hideous, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Now, my lovely Uranus may have become the weapon of those traitors." However, this burst of anger came and disappeared quickly, and soon the anger on the mysterious man's face dissipated, replaced by deep helplessness. A sigh, the mysterious man shook his head. "Stop talking about this, let me tell you what happened after I boarded the colonial ship. That was the beginning of everything. In the vast universe, the distance between the stars and the stars is really too far away, so far that it takes 500 years of our life. There is also a way to get from one life planet to another life planet. 500 years. Wen Yan Yu, the three of Roja looked at each other and saw surprise in each other's eyes. This mysterious man who calls himself the D family lived for 500 years. However, surprise is surprising, the projection in front of him is still talking to himself. Because the distance between the two life planets is too far, the super space jump based on artificial wormholes has become the main way of travel in space travel. However, we know too little about the universe, and in one jump, the accident finally happened. We encountered space turbulence. In the face of the special energy in the space-time turbulence, the proud energy shield of the Uranos was penetrated at the first time. Forced to help, the captain could only choosing to jump out in the middle, although it means that we will deviate from the established route and appear in an unknown place, it is also better than disappearing in the turbulent space. Quote. So, Uranus crashed on a satellite. Yes, that is the planet you made, the moon. And below him is the world. The mysterious man stood up, opened his hands as if to embrace the planet, sighed and took a few deep breaths. A wry smile appeared on the mysterious man's face. Thinking about it now, if we had died in the turbulence of space, I'm afraid it would have been much better than what happened next. As if to calm down the emotions in his heart, the mysterious man walked left and right, and finally sat on the chair behind him. When we on the moon see a habitable planet below, how happy we are. Even if the spacecraft has been paralyzed by the breakdown of time and space, how can that stop our excitement about life in the new world? It was a huge project. The 3,110 surviving people on the colony ship, under the command of the captain, started the repair of Uranus. If you don't have enough tools, build it. If you don't have enough materials, move it elsewhere, or if you don't have enough, go to the moon to mine. However, no one could have imagined that because of the lack of engineering personnel, lack of materials, and a lot of damage to the maintenance robots, this time the maintenance would last for 50 years. If it weren't for the beginning of the second year, the captain discovered the slow progress of the maintenance, and began to divide the members of the ship into dozens of batches, began to hibernate, alternate operations, and opened up a small ecological circle on the moon to build a memorial. The small town in our hometown has extended the enthusiasm of the people indefinitely. I am afraid that most people will not be able to hold on to the moment when the maintenance is over. But even so, there are people on the ship who are tired of endless work and choose death. Dead 673 and number 231. This is the comrade who committed suicide during those 50 years. The mysterious man shook his head with a look of grief on his face. Finally one day, the captain woke everyone up and announced to us excitedly. The ship is repaired. We can go to the living planet below. The long time has finally passed, and we can finally truly feel the air, water, wind, and nature. A look of reminiscence appeared on the face of the mysterious man. Until now, thousands of years have passed, I can still recall the excitement. Quote. The preparations didn't last long, and we landed on the planet of life in a spacecraft and began to explore. Soon, we were surprised to find that on this planet, primitive civilizations had already been born, and their body structures were exactly the same as ours before we embarked on the road of evolution. Naturally, we named them after our own race. Name, human. Humanity. Down from the moon. Ever build a city on the moon? In just a few words, Shanks and Drago were once again shocked. Chapter 334. Thousands of devil fruit abilities. Could it be that this person is the people of the moon? Shanks' eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. In the epic legend of One Piece, in the ancient times, when human beings were ignorant, the people of the moon who lived on the moon, because of lack of resources, left the city of the people of the moon and immigrated from the moon to the planet of the pirate world. But it should be a legend. Dorag murmured in a low voice. If the previous Dorag and Shanks were only shocked by the size of this space battleship, then after listening to the narrative of the mysterious man in front of them, their mentality has undergone tremendous changes. An epic buried in the world is slowly unfolding. Because he had expected it in his heart, Roha was not as shocked as the two of Shanks, but he also took out the video phone bug and began to record the words and deeds of the mysterious man. This video will be recorded in Skynet for analysis and deduction. The mysterious man did not stop because of the shock of several people. As he walked, he told what happened after the colonial ship landed. As technologically advanced as they are naturally unwilling to live with a group of primitive people who have not even entered the farming society. However, because of their physical transformation, they have difficulty in childbirth, and the number of people is less than 3,000. They want to establish the new home is just too hard. So, these people from advanced civilizations try to impart their own knowledge to these people. The process of trying to teach was easier than they thought. The local indigenous people have long been shocked by their appearance and various high-end technologies, calling everything they do a miracle, and respecting them as gods. For the natives at that time, the gods were omnipotent beings, and every move of the gods had profound meanings. In this case, the gods were willing to teach the knowledge of the gods, but the natives were too excited to be excited. Will refuse. Thus, a mighty enlightenment movement began. They came from aliens and found one of the largest human tribes in the world at that time, and began to do enlightenment experiments. Begin to teach ignorant humans as a leader, impart knowledge to them, unify their language, and teach them everything the D family knows. In order to reward these people, the captain also selected dozens of the best people from all over the world, awarded them honors, gave them the identity plates of their dead companions, allowed them to enter and exit Uranus freely, and could use some civilian equipment. However, the foundation of ignorant human beings is really poor. No, there should be no foundation. If you want to teach them knowledge, you must start from the most basic. Not something like 1 + 1 = 2, but more basic knowledge. What is plus, what is minus, what is equal, things like that. However, when the teaching did not last long, some people lost patience. A person recommended by the crew approached the captain and told their thoughts. What thoughts? Shanks asked. Roja on the side frowned slightly, and there was a bad premonition in his heart. The mysterious man still ignored Shanks, but looked up to the sky and sighed in a low voice. They are lost in the worship of primitive humans, and they actually want to be the real gods and enslave the world. However, the captain, who has always been a good man, how could he possibly agree to this request and reject them unceremoniously? Originally, we thought this was the end of the matter, but no one thought that the group of people had been completely lost in worship. That group of bastards. That group of bastards. The mysterious man's face suddenly turned hideous. They actually shut down the system of Oranos and started a war. Just as the mysterious man was speaking, around the roach, suspended screens suddenly appeared, and in the screen, full of war. When they saw the influence on the screen, the three people present couldn't help but look solemn. A beam of light pierced the sky, cut off the sea, destroyed mountains, and wiped out islands. The power of destroying the sky and destroying the earth appeared in the eyes of the three of them. In the early days of the battle, although Uranos could not be used, most of the weapons were still on our side, and with the help of humans, we quickly suppressed the rebels, but at the time of the decisive battle, who would I didn't expect. The mysterious man looked cold, stretched out his hand and waved, and the influence on the surrounding screens suddenly began to change. What appeared on the screen was a red continent. Red Earth continent. And the final decisive battle will start on a huge plain on the Red Earth continent. One side is an army composed of nearly 2,000 members of the D family and hundreds of thousands of humans, armed with various weapons, while the other side has far fewer people. Not only a few hundred people in the D family, but there are only tens of thousands of human beings. As for the weapons in their hands, it was even more appalling. Not to mention the weapons stolen from Uranus, most of them actually used weapons such as swords, and the forging process was extremely backward. Looking at the dull long sword, Roja even doubted whether he could cut off the opponent's body with a single slash. Perhaps the biggest damage to this weapon is the various germs on it. But at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. No matter the number or weapons, they are far inferior to the opposing rebels, and they actually take the initiative to attack. At the moment they dispatched, thousands of people stood out, or turned into birds, or into beasts, and even said that some people turned into streamers, galloping out, with amazing momentum. This is... How is it possible? The voices of Shanks and Drago sounded one after another. Roja looked at the surrounding screens with a dignified expression, and nodded slightly. It really is. On the screen, the war has begun, and the thousands of people who show visions have become the real masters of the battlefield. There was a tall and thin man who turned into golden rays of light and shuttled over the battlefield. When he jumped to the sky, boundless golden streamers shot out from his hands, covering a space of 1,000 meters. Above the sky, a round of scorching sun fell, the sound of explosions trembled for hundreds of miles, and the boundless flames burned, dyeing half of the sky red. In the center of the battlefield, there is a golden Buddha statue standing in the sea of blood on the mountain of corpses. When it is shot with one palm, thousands of rays of light are shining, and the invisible ripples swept across the sky and the earth. In the depths of the pitch-black clouds, thunders like dragons and snakes meandered and shuttled, and from time to time they turned into thunderlights the size of houses, penetrating the heavens and the earth. In the deep sea, countless giant sea kings surrounded a mermaid, slaughtered left and right, stirred the sea, and caused a bloody storm. Chapter 335 Dead End. Glittering fruit, burning fruit, human fruit, Buddha form X thunder fruit and Poseidon. Roha whispered the first few fruits that appeared, and after that, there were countless fruit powers that he knew, or even had never heard of, appeared, disrupting the entire battlefield and causing a bloody storm. Devil fruit power. What the hell is going on? Drago raised his head and stared at the mysterious man in front of him, wanting to hear him explain. However, the mysterious man remained motionless, as if waiting for the end of the war scene on the screen. At this time, the war on the screen is finally coming to an end. The sudden appearance of a large number of devil fruit powers in the rebel army, the army composed of the D family and humans, was obviously taken by surprise. In the face of all kinds of strange abilities, as well as those with natural fruit abilities that cannot be harmed by physical attacks, people who have no experience in battles are losing ground. The tide of the sea of people rushed back, and countless people died under the attack of the devil fruit ability. This time, the retreat was as much as 100 miles, and it was retreated to the feet of Uranos. However, just when everyone was desperate, there was a real buzzing behind them, and a light blue curtain of light enveloped them. Uranos, started 593. In the face of the attacks of thousands of capable people, Uranos' shield showed a defensive ability that would amaze anyone. Steady as Mount High, firm as a rock, motionless. Even the strongest natural fruit power users, attacking with all their strength, failed to make the seemingly thin shield show any signs of being damaged. In the face of such a situation, the rebel army suddenly panicked. However, before they began to retreat, Uranus started. Under the thousands of beams, the war finally ended in a tragic way. The screen gradually faded away. Everyone let out a sigh of relief and relaxed. In that kind of mythical war, thousands of people died every minute and every second. The final result of the war is our victory. The mysterious man's voice sounded again, and his tone was full of grief. However, no one thought that those traitors actually stole the experiments in the genetic laboratory. Product. Quote. That's a study to make up for our clan's low personal combat ability, because it hasn't made up for the lack of fear of water, and it hasn't been used for real. In our expectation, the final result of this research is that every member of our family has several different superpowers, and has hereditary abilities, until hundreds of abilities are integrated into one. It's just that until the traitor stole the test product, we were only able to study a sample that could manipulate aquatic organisms, but the genetics were not stable. That's the mermaid you saw. Having said that, the mysterious man suddenly sighed and shook his head with a wry smile. It's too late to say anything. The test items have been stolen, the test data has been destroyed, and this research can no longer continue. Unfortunately, we didn't name the test items until the end, but after the war, some humans found reborn test items all over the world, and they gave them a name. Devil fruit. This means that in that battle, slaughtering countless people of the same race, like demons, is capable. As if he had finished speaking a long epic, and given time for a few people to digest, the mysterious man fell into a state of stillness again. At this moment, both Shanks and Drago have become statues, with dull eyes and strange expressions. After a full half, Shanks squatted down and exhaled heavily. When he stood up, his face was still full of shock. I never thought that a devil fruit would be an alien thing, and the name would actually mean that. I didn't expect it either. Drago echoed. These two people who used to fight each other when they were young, people who didn't like each other's eyes, actually stood on the same front at this moment. Origin of devil fruit. They never thought that they would be able to come into contact with this kind of thing. However, in addition to the shock, the two have added a little doubt in their hearts. With the combat power displayed by Uranus, coupled with the dominance of the D family, shouldn't it rule the world? Why haven't you even heard of it? And how could this man leave the projection here, and a secret place like Ralph drew? Faint doubts lingered in the hearts of everyone, and they all found a place to sit next to the projection, ready to continue listening to the mysterious man. A few minutes later, the projection fluctuated again, and the mysterious man's voice sounded again. "What did you say just now?" "Oh, the battle is over." Speaking of that battle, the mysterious man smiled wryly. "To be honest, I have never had a good impression of war, and this time, of course, no exception." Quote, "In this battle, more than 200,000 human beings were killed, and there were countless wounded. And our family, there are no 1 in 10. But these can be made up, the population will always build up, and knowledge is priceless." That's right, those damn traitors. When they were stealing the experimental items, they quietly buried the virus in the knowledge base. They even said that they destroyed the breeding facilities on our ship. That bunch of damned guys. For their crazy idea of becoming a true god, they actually destroyed the root of racial breeding. They ruined their future. Without the breeding facilities, just relying on the fertility of our family, within 1,000 years, we will fall into the point of inbreeding. Without the knowledge base, we have no way to guide people in this world. We are just ordinary builders and warriors. Scientists and teachers have long since died in the war. The mysterious man roared hysterically for the first time, and it could be seen that the damage to the breeding facility and knowledge base completely angered him, but there was deep helplessness in the roar. As if he had lost his strength in the roar, the mysterious man stopped talking, but called out a huge screen and began to broadcast the events after the war. It can be seen that after losing the knowledge base and breeding facilities, the people of the D family were lost. Although some people still use their only knowledge to teach human beings, the scene of hundreds of people teaching tens of millions of people will never be seen again. No longer exists. Days pass by, and in the blink of an eye, 100 years have passed. In the past 100 years, human progress has been rapid. They have built a huge city with Uranus as the center. Hundreds of races and hundreds of thousands of people live in this city, and everything is full of vigor. However, the D family began to age. Even if they have 500 years of lifespan, in the world, when they arrived in the pirate world, their average age was already over 200 years old, and now their average age has reached 300 years old. Although their faces are not old, in fact, the spirit of most of them has begun to decline. In this case, people are divided. Some people want to live like this naturally, to look around the world, or to accompany human beings until they die slowly. Others, on the other hand, want to see how far this race that they have let alone can develop. Therefore, those who wanted to take a look at the future of mankind chose to enter the hibernation chamber and began a long hibernation. And this is where the nightmare begins. Chapter 336. Thousands of years later. Chose the hibernating D family. They adjusted the time they woke up. They would wake up every 100 years or more, and during this time, Uranus had been in an absolutely closed state. 100 years is such a long time. For humans whose average lifespan was less than 50 years old at that time, it was already a lifetime, and it was difficult to see the scene opened by Uranus. The birth and passing of life, the rise and fall of kingdoms. Thousands of years have passed, the city of Uranos has long been destroyed and buried under the earth, and the people in Uranos have gradually become legends. And the human world continues. D, who knew that the race could not continue, did not participate in the human world this time, but instead acted as a bystander to history. Every time he appeared, he traveled around the world as a traveler, recorded the changes in the world, and entered it into the information database of Uranos, quietly recording the changes in the world. D family who once chose to accompany mankind, they have long been unable to withstand the power of time, and disappeared into the endless river of history, leaving behind countless legends. Some people have chosen to combine with human beings in the long period of time, and they are lucky enough to leave an heir and inherit the name of D. However, not all people can choose to combine with foreigners, and more people choose to live alone and die on the road of leading mankind. This situation has lasted for thousands of years, and the picture on the screen is also changing rapidly. Suddenly, the screen stopped changing rapidly, but locked in a room. In the room, there are two hibernation chambers like glass troughs. With a mechanical sound, a naked man with a resolute face walked out of one of the hibernation chambers. When seeing this man, the three of Roja couldn't help but look up at the mysterious man who was silent in front of him. Because the person who came out of the hibernation bin looked exactly like him. As if answering the question for everyone, the mysterious man finally spoke. "I believe you have seen it. The hibernation cell I am in is different from the rest of the members, because I am the deputy captain of Oranos, named Laces D. Kylewright. And in the hibernation cell next to me, the captain who has been leading us is sleeping, but because he was seriously injured in the war, he chose to hibernate for a long time and stay in the combination of the hibernation cell and the training cabin forever. In the cabin, guard Oranos." Hearing the explanation of Deputy Captain Laces, Roja nodded lightly and continued to look at the screen in front of him. Laces in the picture, after adapting to the side effects of the millennium hibernation, dressed neatly, woke up the system in the room, and started routine monitoring. That is also a common agreement for all those who choose to hibernate. Every waking up companion must carefully test Oranos to make sure everything is safe. However, when Laces detected the hibernation pod, something unexpected happened. In the nearly 100 hibernation chambers, only the hibernation chamber next to him has his companions alive, and the rest of the hibernation chambers are actually empty. This scene made Laces a little overwhelmed. According to their previous agreement, after everyone wakes up, they will only roam the world for 3 to 5 years, and then they will fall into hibernation again. If it is calculated like this, they can live for at least several thousand years, and even if someone dies due to an accident outside, it will never be in this state. Knowing that the situation was strange, Laces did not choose to leave the room immediately, but fully armed himself, and then used the console in the room to start checking the monitoring inside Oranos. When the surveillance was switched to the place where the ordinary members hibernated, the scene in front of him made him horrified. Hundreds of hibernation chambers were once arrayed, and nearly 100 of the same clan hibernated in this place. There are actually traces of battle. Although many years have passed, traces of blood can still be seen in some places. In addition, there are actually dozens of human beings in armor stationed here, and half of them are directly guarding the door of the room where the last two hibernation chambers are placed, which is outside the room where Laces is now. When Laces saw the identity plates hanging around the necks of several of the humans, his complexion suddenly changed, and a bad premonition rose in his heart. With a dignified expression, Laces began to look through the surveillance video for thousands of years. After a series of manipulations, the first outsider recording is finally on the video. Ellipsis ellipsis. 9 flowers. Because the monitoring of Oranos is not only aimed at the inside, but also the monitoring from the outside, all the pictures appear at the beginning of the space outside of Oranos. At this time, Oranos, because of thousands of years of war and geological movement, has long been buried in an underground cavity and has not been discovered. 200 years before Laces woke up, with the sound of a blast, a mighty team of hundreds of people appeared at the door of Oranos along the blasting gap in the rock wall. In front of this group of people stood a few people who looked like leaders, and in the center of the group, there was a group of about 40 people, protected by everyone. Without exception, including the leaders, these 40 people had a small crystal sign hanging around their necks. It was they who once gave out the identity plate. Seeing this, Roja has roughly guessed what will happen next. Sure enough, after the discovery of Oranos, the group of people from the outside immediately boiled, and even said that someone immediately took out the identity plate and ran to Oranos, wanting to enter Oranos. However, before he could walk past, someone stopped him. The dispute has begun. Through the recording that appeared on the screen, the three of Roja also learned about the situation. The people who come here are all descendants of the followers of the D family. They know the contribution of the D family to mankind, and they know more about the power of the D family. Every once in a while, someone from the D family wakes up from hibernation. Come and travel the world. Soon, the group split into two factions. The faction with a large number of them did not want to disturb the sleep of the D family so rashly, and even more did not want to enter Oranos without the permission of the master. They regard the D family as a great ancestor, a human mentor, and they respect it very much. They came to find Uranus, just to fulfill the last wish of their ancestors. The other group of people came with personal desires entirely because they knew the powerful power possessed by the D family. They want to capture Uranos, and they want to take the technological power of the D family for themselves. If the D family does not agree, then kill them all. Chapter 337 The Source of Everything. The dispute soon subsided, and in the face of the supporters who far outnumbered them, the predators with selfish desires chose to compromise. The brigade chose to camp and rest at the foot of Uranos. For the sake of safety, the supporters seized the right to patrol and watch the night, not only to ensure the safety of the camp, but also to prevent the predators from making dangerous moves. However, before night came, the marauders had already started their action. The colorless and odorless incense was disguised as a mosquito-repellent spice and put it all over the camp. In just a few minutes, the supporters completely lost their ability to resist. Facing the supporters who lost the ability to resist, the predators did not kill them immediately, but threatened the lives of their subordinates and relatives, and began to persuade them to surrender. Because the identity plate given by the D family is bound to their bloodline, only those with the bloodline can use the nameplate, and to manipulate Oranos, at least a dozen ordinary member nameplates and one nameplates above the rank of vice captain can only be used. Under various interrogations, groups of supporters were mercilessly slaughtered, and those who tried to pretend to surrender were also brutally killed. In the end, including a few cowardly surrenderers, only 20 of the survivors still held identity plates. The next thing is very simple. They entered Uranos, took away all the resources that could be taken, and sent soldiers to stay in Uranos' pavilion master. Capture, kill, anyone who wakes up from the hibernation barn. 20 people. Roja and Shanks looked at each other and understood each other's thoughts. 800 years ago, 20 ambitious kings joined forces to create a world ruler power called world government. The screen gradually dissipated, and the low voice of the deputy captain Laces reverberated in the bridge again. After watching the video, I know what they want. According to the basic decree of our clan, when the captain dies, the deputy captain is promoted to the captain, and a suitable person is selected from the ordinary members to be promoted to the deputy captain. When the deputy captain dies, the same is true. They want me and the captain dead, so they can manipulate Oranos. But because the construction materials of important locations in Uranos belong to the highest alloys, with their strength, they cannot be broken at all, so they can only guard the door, waiting for us to come out, or starve to death. Having said that, Laces shook his head sarcastically. But they didn't expect that I still came out and came to the outside world, hiding among humans. I want revenge, so I need strength. I need to know more about human beings back then. But as I learned more and more, I also became more and more desperate. The original group of rebels have built kingdoms one by one relying on the technology plundered from Uranus. 20 kingdoms. How could I destroy them all alone? So, I chose to look for help, which is humans. It took me several years to find a few of my compatriots who lingered around the world, and told them what happened to Oranos. We are united together, and it took us decades to control a kingdom and make it prosperous, even stronger than the kingdom of those rebels. However, they found us anyway. Having said that, a little bit of sparkle appeared in Lassett's projected eyes, and 2 lines of hot tears were left on his face. The war broke out. The power of the rebels is really too strong. We who can't manipulate Uranus, we can't resist it, and we watch the kingdom we built with one hand and be destroyed in the fire of war, but we can't do anything. The kingdom was destroyed, and the companions died one after another. Even that fool, Joyboy, died. Before he died, he was still chanting the name of the mermaid princess. While vomiting blood, he held my hand tightly, and told me that I must help the Murlocs who were banished into the deep sea because of the previous war, and help them see the light of day again. But I'm going to die. Saying that, Lasses looked left and right, and spread his hands in self-deprecation. No way, I was already very old when I became a captain. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen it at the beginning, and I only woke up once in a few hundred years. Life is coming to an end, but my revenge is not over yet. But fortunately, there is still a small army in the kingdom under my command. We raided Uranos, and although we couldn't start Uranos, fortunately I can do something else. Laces patted the main console behind him. I dismantled the energy core of Uranos. Down, loaded something, drove this Kronos, and came here, the end of this strange route. In this case, it is not so simple for those rebels to start Uranus to do whatever they want. With their technological strength, I am afraid that it will take hundreds of years to gather the energy dispatched by Uranus. At the end of my life, in order to be able to take revenge, I found the characteristic stone tablets that were once used to write epics, selected 4 of the red stone tablets, and engraved the signposts to come here. It's also the last thing I do in my life. Oh, by the way, I also did one more thing, and that was before I left here. I left this video. Lasses gently hooked the corner of his mouth, swept away the shadows from his body, and spoke loudly. Since you can enter this ship in a normal way and activate this video, it means that among you, there are descendants of RD family. To be honest, it's really nice to meet you. But don't worry, I don't want you to take revenge. When will the grievances be repaid? You should have your own life on 5.1. But, Rasses's tone suddenly became solemn. If the kingdom of those rebels is destroying this world, then this Kronos is the key to defeating them. The power of the Kronos energy core can completely destroy Uranos. It will be the last key. The projection gradually began to be illusory and fluctuated. Lasses smiled and waved his hand in front of him. Ha ha ha, well, I'm tired of listening to my 400-year-old old man telling stories. If I don't say it, I should go too. Oh, that's right. Saying that, Lasses suddenly twitched the corners of his mouth and laughed. I left some things for you little guys on the boat. I hope you can be satisfied. Then. Farewell. Chapter 338 Cowardly Big Mom. The projection finally dissipated, and the lights gradually came on all over the bridge, illuminating the entire bridge. However, the mood of the 3 of Roja was a little heavy. Anyone who understands this kind of history and witnesses thousands of people who are dreaming and looking for a new home will die in a foreign land. Shang-Chi sighed, and at this moment, the metal ball that led them over flew over again staggeringly. Accompanied by a blue light, a projection screen appeared in front of the 3 of them, and on it, there were dense texts. This is the text in the historical text. I don't understand it. Shanks looked at the densely packed odd-shaped symbols with a confused expression. As if he understood Shank's words, the text on the screen disappeared instantly, and when it reappeared a few seconds later, it had become a common language. Of course, even the lingua franca was the lingua franca of 800 years ago. Fortunately, after the establishment of the world government, the common language has not changed much, and the 3 can still understand it. How to use the energy core. Uranos weapons collection. Shield analysis formula. Kronos manipulation method. License agreement. Roja and Drago read the information on the screen little by little, and after watching for a while, Shanks pouted, stopped looking at these things that made him dizzy, and squatted down and looked at the message below. Well, Let me see, this is a storage material. 2,000 tons of gold. 2,000 tons. Shanks couldn't help exclaiming when he saw it for the first time, rubbed his eyes, and when he looked at it again, it was still 2,000 tons. The big characters are in front of you. Even Roja and Drago couldn't help being drawn by Shanks' startled breath. Rao is Roja, who has long been unmoved by money, and can't help but be stunned by the number in front of him. 2,000 tons of gold, what is the concept? If it were changed to the price of the previous life, these golds would be worth at least 500 billion yuan. And the most important thing is that on the list of Kronos storage materials, these 2,000 tons of gold are only a small part of it. Pearls, gems, crystals, jade, all kinds of valuable things are available, and the amount is extremely amazing. In addition, things such as special alloys, high-efficiency medicines, energy crystals, weapons and equipment are also piled up in warehouses, and there are even 4 small fighter jets on the 2 wings of Kronos. After visiting the various warehouses, suddenly seeing such a huge amount of supplies, the 3 of Roja were at a loss for a while. Shanks, just because he suddenly saw so much money, was naturally excited, and Drago thought about how far the revolutionary army could develop and grow if the money belonged to him. As for Roja, he was thinking about whether he could go back on his promise to Bigmom to give her all his treasures, and if he couldn't, how to strive for greater benefits. After a while, Roja calmed down, raised his head and looked at the 2 around him. Let's go out and gather everyone first. The 2 of Shanks nodded silently, and neither of them missed the treasure behind them. For Shanks, money is enough, but Drago thinks more simply. Roja eats meat, and he always has some soup to drink. After walking out of Kronos, Roja fired a signal flare, and it didn't take long for everyone to come from all directions and gather together. Because of the presence of Bigmom, Roja did not tell all the things, just told everyone that Kronos had a lot of treasures and led them to visit. Witnessing a large number of treasures piled up in warehouses, everyone's eyes became brighter and brighter, but Bigmom's face became more and more gloomy. There are too many financial reports, beyond her imagination. Even said that it has reached the level that makes her restless. Before coming to Ralph Drew, many members of the red-haired pirates were told by Shanks that the treasure they found this time belonged to Bigmom, and everyone agreed to it at the time. But after all, not all members of the red-haired pirates can regard money as something outside themselves. Originally, according to their estimates, Ralph Drone's treasure was only a few billion bellies at most. Even if there is no Bigmom, Roja will take one. The red-haired pirates don't have a lot of money in the hands of everyone. However, they never imagined that there are so many treasures here, and it is even considered a small amount of billions of bells for each person. Seeing so many treasures suddenly, and thinking of giving it to Bigmom in vain, some members of the red-haired pirates looked at Bigmom with a hint of danger in their eyes. Thinking of the possibility of facing the 4 Emperor pirates plus Roja's siege, Bigmom's face was clouded for a while, and his whole body was stiff. Seeing that more and more people were staring at her secretly, Bigmom could no longer bear the pressure and grabbed Roja. What's wrong? Roja looked at Bigmom suspiciously. Come here, I have something to tell you. Bigmom opened his mouth slowly, looking around. Roja blinked, glanced around subconsciously, understood in an instant, and nodded. Shanks, take them around first. I'll talk to Bigmom. Roja shouted loudly, receiving a gesture that Shanks understood, and immediately came to Kronos with Bigmom. Roja, about the treasure. Big007 hesitated. Seeing Bigmom's tangled look of fear and reluctance, Roja chuckled and shook his head. Don't worry, what I said to you is yours. No one can move, and no one dares to move. No, there are too many of these. I can't use them up at all. Let's do it. I'll take 1/3 of it, and the rest will be yours. Bigmom waved his hands again and again. For a moment, he looked at Roja nervously. More Roja comforted her, the more uneasy Bigmom became. It was about such a huge treasure, who could guarantee that what Roja said was true or false? 1/3 of the treasure is enough for Bigmom to fulfill its dream. Seeing that Bigmom refused to accept it, Roja also happened to push the boat and agreed. After the talk, Bigmom breathed a sigh of relief, and the whole person relaxed. But at this moment, Roja's voice sounded in her ears again. Do you want to build a kingdom? Do you think that with the strength of the Big Mom pirates, you can really maintain the status of One Piece and play with you? This, Bigmom frowned and looked at Roja. What do you want to say? Roja hooked the corner of his mouth. If you don't mind, I have a deal here. I don't know if you want to hear it or not. Chapter 339 One Piece, Big Mom. 3 days later, the red-haired pirate, who was looting recklessly in Ralph Drone, drove away with Bigmom and a large amount of gold and silver treasures. And Drago, after giving control of Kronos to Roja, was sent back to the Revolutionary Army station by Roja. Of course, there is also a lot of wealth, which greatly enriched the military expenditure of the Revolutionary Army. As for Roja, it took up to a week to dig the entire Ralph Drew 3 feet into the ground and completely emptied it. Except for the part of the treasure that Bigmom promised, all of it was transported back to the Seven Waters. Half a month after Roja returned to the Seven Waters, only a letter was left, and Bigmom, who disappeared mysteriously, finally returned to Cake Island. Early the next morning, Bigmom issued the highest-level assembly order, and all members of the Big Mom pirates rushed to Cake Island. A week later, a fleet of dozens of warships headed for the depths of the great shipping route. During this period, there was no shortage of spies sent by various forces, who fell behind the Big Mom pirates' fleet, intending to monitor. But this time, the actions of the Big Mom pirates were extremely abnormal. The warships separated from the fleet and began to frantically pursue any ships that followed the fleet. Even if they were both fighting to perish together, no ships would be allowed to keep up with the Big Mom Sea. The Fleet of Thieves. After nearly 20 warships were separated from the brigade and several warships sank, the fleet of the Big Mom pirates finally disappeared from the sight of the world. The crazy action of the Big Mom pirates completely aroused the curiosity of the world. However, the fleet of the Big Mom pirates has disappeared, and the major forces without any clues can only secretly guess the purpose of the Big Mom pirates. Some people say that the Big Mom pirates found a huge gold mine and want to dig it. Others say that the Big Mom pirates provoked the Dimensional Brigade, worried about being wiped out and started to run away. Others said that the Big Mom pirates the regiment was conspiring with a certain force, so the fleet was hidden. In short, during the period when the Big Mom pirates disappeared, countless voices of suspicion sounded, and there were different opinions, but no one thought about Ralph Drew. After all, in the last battle between the Big Mom pirates and the red-haired pirates, a piece of historical text of the road sign was stolen, and the failure of the Big Mom pirates' pursuit has long been known to the world. There were still many people who secretly laughed at the two. One of the 4 Emperor pirates. However, when the Big Mom pirates reappeared a month after disappearing, they gave everyone in the world a heavy hammer. Bigmom has announced that she has obtained the treasure of Ralph Drew, officially calling herself One Piece. After learning about Bigmom's announcement, the whole sea boiled, and countless voices of doubt sounded from all over the world. Even the Whitebeard pirates were shocked. In the face of overwhelming doubts, the Big Mom pirates did not explain too much, but released the words, "In a month's time, they will hold a banquet at the Cake Island Plaza, and show evidence that they have been to Ralph Drew." At that time, the Big Mom pirates welcome any questions, whether they have been to Ralph Drew, come to identify. For a while, on the sea, the wind was surging, and countless forces sent people to Cake Island to participate in this feast either in order to identify the authenticity of the historical text of the road sign, or to join in the fun. Witness the historic moment. And as the head of the 4 emperors, the Whitebeard pirates are no exception. New World, Cake Island is 50 nautical miles away. A azure blue warship, sailing on the sea, crossed a cross on the mast, and a flag painted with a white crescent beard on the skull fluttered in the wind. The flag of the Whitebeard Pirates. At the bow of this battleship, 3 men with strong builds stood together and looked at the gradually growing Cake Island in the distance. The Whitebeard Pirates, the captain of the 1st Division, the Phoenix, Marco. 5th Division Captain, Foil, Vista. The captain of the 11th Division, Jin Gudo. The Whitebeard Pirates have only 16 captains in total. This time, 3 of them were dispatched, and even more so. Marco, who was hailed as the vice-captain of the Whitebeard Pirates by the outside world, can be imagined. The importance of the group to this banquet. It's coming soon. Vista put his arms around his chest and looked at the 2 people beside him. Do you think the guys from the Big Mom Pirates have really been to Ralph? It's true or not, you'll know if you go there and see. Marco sneered, and it could be seen that Bigmom dared to call himself the Pirate King, which made him extremely angry. In Marco's cognition, except for Whitebeard, no one can afford the title of One Piece. No one can stand on top of Whitebeard. Bigmom's move here is simply insulting the name of One Piece and the Whitebeard Pirates. Is equivalent to insulting him. Such an unprecedented sense of humiliation makes Marco mad. But what if she did show evidence that they had been to Ralph Drew? Jin Gudo said hesitantly. Hey, Marco sneered, his eyes gloomy, what if there is evidence? Even Roger never said that whoever gets to Ralph Drew is One Piece. Also, what if Roger said it? Just Bigmom, you want to step on Daddy's head. I want to see if she is worthy of being the Pirate King. At the end, Marco's eyes were red, and he was holding the fence in front of him tightly, and the sound of wood smashing kept coming from his palms. Marco, you. Vista, who was on the side, noticed Marco's intention and couldn't help frowning. Vista. Marco turned his head suddenly, stared at Vista, and said word by word, no one can step on Daddy's head. No one. I don't care what Dad thinks. I can't stand it, let Dad suffer such humiliation. Even if I quit the Whitebeard Pirates, I can't make Bigmom the king. Marco's roar echoed on the deck, and for a while, the entire deck was silent, and everyone looked at the crazy Marco. After speaking, Marco turned his head again and stared at the Cake Island that was getting closer and closer in the distance. But at this moment, a hand suddenly rested on Marco's shoulder. You guy, I haven't finished yet. What roar, do you think that's what you think? Vista's chuckle came from behind Marco. Marco was stunned for a moment, then turned to look with some doubts. You mean? Of course it's a riot, but I want to see if Bigmom, the Pirate King, has the courage to attack me. Vista grinned, his tone full of heroism. Take me one. Jin Guduo on the side also stretched out his hand and put it on Marco's shoulder. The words of the two seemed to arouse the thoughts of everyone, and the pirates on the deck suddenly became noisy. Soon, a voice full of fighting intent rang out on the deck. Take me one too. I'm going to. I've long been unhappy with the pirate group led by that bitch. Fuck them. Today, even if I risk my life, I want to let that fat pig know that One Piece is not something she can be. Glancing across the faces of his companions, Marco wiped the corners of his eyes and shook his head. You guys are really going to make trouble. After speaking, Marco clenched his right hand and raised his fist abruptly. Well, today we will let them know who One Piece belongs to. Belonging to Whitebeard. Oh. There is something at home today, there are only 2 updates, and I will make up for it tomorrow. Chapter 340 Girl Pirates. Big Mom Pirates, Headquarters, Cake Island. Cake Island, which has rarely been passed by foreign ships in the past, has changed its calmness today. Ships of all kinds, large and small, came in a steady stream from all directions, docking on the huge port temporarily opened on Cake Island. A large number of people got off the boat and gathered on the port, waiting for the members of the Big Mom Pirates, leading them to the central square of Cake Island in turn. These people come from all directions, with different identities and mixed dragons and snakes. Among them are the big pirates with a bounty of hundreds of millions, and the miscellaneous fish with a total of less than 100 million. In addition to the pirates, the mafia, killers, spies, representatives of the kingdoms of the New World, people of various identities, all gathered together. Such a mixed gathering of dragons and snakes will naturally divide into small circles, gathering in twos and threes to discuss their views on this banquet, as well as what they have seen and heard. Hey, tell me, did BIGMOM get Ralph Drew's treasure? I think I definitely got it, otherwise, BIGMOM's face will be disgraced. That's weird. Didn't I say before that they competed with the Red Hair Pirates and the Dimensional Brigade for the historical text of the road sign, and were finally robbed by the mysterious person? Who knows, maybe the Big Mom Pirates found that guy secretly, but in my opinion, the one who stole something might be the one from the Big Mom Pirates. Think about it, the battle was so fierce back then, and there was no point in it. Means, how is it possible for the Big Mom Pirates, 317 to snatch the things from the Dimension Brigade? No way. Then she did this and was found out. Can the red-haired pirates and the Dimensional Brigade spare him? Wouldn't she be beaten to ashes? It's okay if you don't let them know. Besides, how could we know what deal they have secretly? It's all you need to watch the play. It would be interesting to find Ralph Drew's treasure. One Piece's treasure, how much would it cost? Hey, money is secondary, but I want to see, BIGMOM is so king, how will the Whitebeard and the red hair deal with it, who can allow each other to step on their own heads? Lot of discussion in the crowd, but most people still believe that BIGMOM had obtained the treasure of Ralph Drew, and the Whitebeard Pirates and the Red Hair Pirates, which were as famous as the Big Mom Pirates, also became the focus of everyone's discussion. However, just as the enthusiasm for the discussion was getting higher and higher, a few exclamations suddenly came from the crowd. In just a few seconds, the entire port was completely quiet. There is no other reason. Because the ship of the Whitebeard Pirates is here. Under the gaze of thousands of people, the ship of the Whitebeard Pirates slowly docked at the port. Marco, Vista, and Jin Gudo walked down one after another, and behind them were nearly 100 members of the Whitebeard Pirates. Oh, there are quite a lot of people. Marco casually swept the crowd lingering on the port, pouted, and looked contemptuous. For these people who came to join in the fun, Marco didn't have the slightest favor. In his eyes, no matter what the purpose of these people, since they are here, they are to create momentum for BIGMOM, which makes Marco, who is extremely dissatisfied with BIGMOM, look at these people in front of him. The people of the Whitebeard Pirates had just stepped off the boat, and the crowd in front of them separated like a tide, revealing a path. At the momentum of the road, three powerful men walked over slowly. BIGMOM Pirates, the head of the four generals, Charlotte Katakuri. Minister of Baking, Charlotte Owen, the hot fruit ability. The Minister of Beans, Charlotte Daifuku, the one with the ability to transpiration fruit. These powerhouses who had been waiting at the port to prevent accidents, greeted them the first time they saw the members of the Whitebeard Pirates. Marco, I didn't expect you to be here. Katakuri stepped forward and looked at Marco with an indifferent expression. Seeing Katakuri, Marco and his party stopped 10 meters away from Katakuri. No way, Katakuri is really too tall, up to 5 meters tall. If Marco stood face to face with him, I'm afraid his neck would be broken. What? This is how you treat guests? Marco looked at Katakuri, who was blocking the road, with a sarcastic expression. Women's courage is to laugh, but they dare not let us in. You. Hearing this, the members of the Big Mom Pirates who gathered around suddenly turned cold, their eyes annoyed, and some people in the surrounding crowd showed expressions of watching the excitement. They are also the 4 Emperor-level pirates. Although the Whitebeard Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates have never really fought, the confrontation between the private cadres and the bottom members has never stopped. Marco and Katakuri, as the existence of the 2 regiments, second only to the 4 emperors, have fought more than a dozen times on the surface, and they don't know how many times they have fought in the dark. As among the four emperors, the only anti-pirates headed by a woman was often gossiped about this matter, and even said that some people who did not understand the horror of anti-privately called them members of the anti-pirates. It's a bunch of useless people who only hide behind women's backs. However, speaking of 1,000 to 10,000, this is only what is said in private, and usually no one dares to say it in person. After all, that means angering all the members of the Big Mom Pirates. However, now, Marco actually satirizes Katakuri in front of thousands of people. There was an uproar in the crowd, and some people had already started to flee, for fear of being involved in the battle. Woman. The blue veins collapsed, Katakuri's face was gloomy and terrifying, and there was a white sticky object on his body, which slowly flowed out. What am I saying? Marco didn't have the slightest sense of being in the local base camp, and his body was burning with green flames. Behind the two of them, the sound of unsheathed swords sounded. For a while, icy killing intent covered the entire port. No, they're going to do it here. Let's go. Go. No one wants to live after a fight. Get out of the way. Make way for Lao Su. Seeing that Katakuri and Marco were about to fight, the crowd gathered at the port suddenly panicked. There were screams, and the sound of panic continued. Seeing the commotion around, Katakuri frowned, and a look of disgust appeared between his brows. These people who stayed in the port and waited for the attendants to be picked up were all trash fish. They had real identities. As early as when they got off the ship, they had been taken to the banquet hall. Some people who arrived early had special room for rest. But even so, Katakuri didn't want to fight at the port and cause the death of the people who came to watch the ceremony. That would be too bad for Bigmom's face. Quiet me all, Katakuri shouted, and there was some kind of mysterious atmosphere in the sound. For some reason, when they heard this sound, the panicked crowd froze and became quiet. Glancing at the crowd that stopped, Katakuri snorted coldly, turned around and left. Pokermus, take them to the banquet hall. Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, Pokemuston with a lion's head emerged from the crowd and came to Marco with a smirk. Boss Marco, please. Pokemus bowed and waved his hand. HMPH. I can hold back this, what a bitch. Marco snorted coldly and stepped forward, with Pokemus behind him, as if he hadn't heard Marco's words at all, obediently guiding him the way.